Yo, what's up? Welcome to Monkey DFIC, where stories come alive. Buckle up because today we have What If Shirahoshi Left Fishman Island for Love and Luffy Made the Mermaid Princess His Nakama Forever. Quick favor, if you dig this content, drop a like and subscribe. It takes just a second but means so much to us. Let's roll. Chapter 1, The Princess's Decision. Shirahoshi couldn't sleep. Again. The vast, ornate bedroom of Hardshell Tower felt more like a prison than ever before. She floated near the ceiling, her massive pink tail swishing nervously as she gazed through the window at the twinkling lights of Fishman Island. The familiar knot of longing twisted in her chest, not for the kingdom she'd barely seen despite living there for 16 years, but for something more. Someone more. Luffy-sama, she whispered to herself, clutching the pearl bracelet he'd given her before leaving. 3 months had passed since the Straw Hat Pirates had saved her kingdom from Hody Jones, and every day without them, without him, felt emptier than the last. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. "Princess. Are you still awake?" Minister of the Right's voice came muffled through the door. Shirahoshi quickly descended, adjusting herself to appear as though she'd been resting properly. "Yes, you may enter." The small pufferfish Fishman waddled in, carrying a stack of documents. "Forgive the late intrusion, Princess, but these marriage proposals require your attention by tomorrow's council meeting." Marriage proposals. Just the words made her stomach clench. More. She tried to keep her voice steady. "I thought I made my feelings clear last week." "Indeed, Princess, but the Neptune army generals feel an alliance marriage would strengthen our kingdom's position, especially with rumors of unrest in the New World." He placed the documents on her bedside table. "Your father doesn't wish to pressure you, but the council is growing insistent." After he left, Shirahoshi picked up the topmost document, a portrait of some smug-looking prince from the North Blue attached to pages of political advantages a union would bring. She set it down without reading further. The parade of suitors had become relentless since word spread that the Mermaid Princess had emerged from seclusion. None of them knew her. None of them cared to. Not like Luffy had. Luffy, who'd called her a crybaby but wiped away her tears. Luffy, who'd stuffed those awful sweets in his mouth just to spare her feelings. Luffy, who'd seen her not as Poseidon or a princess or even a giant mermaid, but just as Shirahoshi. She swam to her treasure box and pulled out the newspaper clipping she'd saved. The Straw Hats had made headlines again, something about an incident at Punk Hazard. The photo showed their ship, the Thousand Sunny, sailing away from an island of fire and ice. "They're seeing the whole world," she whispered, tracing the image with her finger. "While I've never even left Fishman Island." Something shifted inside her then, like the turning of a great tide. She'd promised herself after Mother's death that she would become stronger, braver. Hadn't she already taken the first step by leaving the tower during Hody's attack? Yet here she was, back in her gilded cage, awaiting a future others had designed for her. Megalo, her faithful shark companion, sensed her distress and nudged her hand. "Megalo," Shirahoshi said, suddenly decisive. "I need your help with something important." King Neptune rubbed his tired eyes as he reviewed trade agreements in his chamber. The responsibility of ruling weighed heavier on him since the revelation that his daughter carried the power of one of the ancient weapons. The world government had been suspiciously quiet on the matter, too quiet, and Neptune knew it was only a matter of time before they made some move. A splash at his door announced Minister of the Left. "Your Majesty, forgive the interruption." "What is it?" "It's quite late." "It's the princess, sire. The guards report she's packing bags and asking strange questions about surface currents." Neptune's trident clattered to the floor. "What?" Within minutes, he burst into Shirahoshi's chambers to find her stuffing clothes into an enormous waterproof sack while Megalo hovered anxiously nearby. "Shirahoshi. What is the meaning of this?" She jumped, nearly hitting her head on the ceiling. "Father. I was just planning to leave." Without telling me. His voice thundered through the room, making the coral decorations tremble. Shirahoshi straightened to her full height, gathering her courage. Yes, father. I've made my decision. What decision? To abandon your kingdom? Your responsibilities? To live my life? Her voice rose with unexpected strength. I've spent 16 years in this tower. I want to see the world Luffy-sama told me about. I want to be brave, not just talk about being brave. Neptune's anger deflated somewhat. Shirahoshi. I know about the marriage proposals, father. I know the council wants me to choose someone to strengthen our kingdom. She clutched her bracelet. But my heart has already chosen. Understanding dawned on Neptune's face. The Straw Hat Boy. Shirahoshi blushed but met his eyes steadily. Luffy-sama showed me kindness when I was afraid. He believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. Her eyes shimmered with tears she refused to let fall. I don't know if he feels the same, but I do know I cannot stay here wondering, what if, forever. Neptune sank heavily onto her oversized bed. The surface world is dangerous, Shirahoshi. Especially for you. If the wrong people discovered your power, the wrong people already know, she countered. And hiding hasn't made me any safer. It's only made me weaker. Jamon. Neptune sighed. You sound just like your mother. He looked up at his daughter, no longer the frightened child who'd hidden away after Otoheim's death, but a young woman with determination in her eyes. The royal family cannot simply abandon the kingdom. I'm not abandoning anyone. But I must follow my heart, just as mother always taught us. Shirahoshi moved closer, taking her father's massive hands in hers. If I don't go now, I'll spend my life regretting it. A long silence stretched between them. Finally, Neptune spoke. You realize what you're asking? The danger you'll face? The scandal it will cause? I do. Neptune closed his eyes, the weight of his decision heavy. Then I cannot stop you. But neither can I officially sanction this adventure. The political ramifications would be too severe. Shirahoshi's eyes widened. You mean? You must go in secret. If asked, I will say you've retreated into deeper meditation. It will buy you some time before anyone realizes you're gone. His expression turned grave. But Shirahoshi, you must promise me something. Anything, father. If this straw hat does not return your feelings, or if the danger becomes too great, you will return home immediately. Shirahoshi nodded solemnly. I promise. Neptune rose, his expression a mixture of pride and worry. Then go quickly. The Neptune army changes shifts at dawn. That will be your best chance to slip away unnoticed. As he turned to leave, Shirahoshi caught him in a fierce embrace. Thank you, father. Be careful, my daughter, he whispered. And be sure this is truly what you want. She pulled back, resolution clear on her face. It is. After Neptune left, Shirahoshi resumed packing with renewed purpose. She included only necessities, clothes, her mother's diary, a special coral compass that worked on the surface, and a small but potent collection of medicines developed specifically for merfolk traveling above water. Megalo, she whispered to her shark friend, who was anxiously circling the room. We leave at dawn. Can I count on you to help me reach the surface? The shark nudged her affectionately, his toothy grin seemingly wider than usual. Shirahoshi glanced around her bedroom one last time. The shelves of seashell collections, the pearl-encrusted vanity, the plush bed made from the softest sea sponges, all the trappings of a princess's life that had also been the boundaries of her world for too long. I'm finally going to see it, Megalo, she said, her voice full of wonder. The real sun. Real clouds. And Luffy-sama. She hugged herself, excitement and nerves battling within her chest. Even if he doesn't feel the same way, I need to know. I need to try. Dawn couldn't come fast enough. The changing of the guards proceeded with its usual military precision. Fishman soldiers in their distinctive armor filed out of the palace grounds while fresh troops marched in, bleary-eyed from their early wake-up but alert to their duties. None noticed the massive shadow that slipped out through the royal aquaculture gardens, a shark swimming determinedly beside it. Shirahoshi's heart hammered as she navigated through the quieter outskirts of the kingdom. Megalo led the way, having scouted a path that avoided the busiest areas. The massive bubble surrounding Fishman Island glimmered above them, her gateway to freedom. Almost there, she whispered to herself, clutching her bag tighter. Just a little further, Princess Shirahoshi. She froze. A patrol of 3 soldiers had spotted her from behind a coral formation. Princess! What are you doing outside the palace without an escort? The lead guard, a stocky flounder fishman, approached with concern rather than suspicion. Shirahoshi's mind raced. I'm just taking an early morning swim with Megalo. The gardens were feeling a bit confined today. The guards exchanged glances. We should accompany you, Your Highness. Your safety is paramount. That won't be necessary, she said quickly. I won't go far, and Megalo is with me. The lead guard frowned. With all due respect, Princess, that bag suggests you're planning more than a brief swim. If you're leaving the palace grounds, protocol demands, Megalo. Shirahoshi whispered urgently. The shark didn't hesitate. He swam rapidly toward the guards, circling them in tight loops that released a disorienting trail of bubbles. While they were distracted, Shirahoshi darted upward with surprising speed for someone her size, heading straight for the bubble wall. Princess, stop, one of the guards shouted, breaking free from Megalo's distraction. It's dangerous. But Shirahoshi had made up her mind. With a powerful thrust of her tail, she breached the bubble surrounding Fishman Island. The sensation was immediate and shocking, water pressure decreasing rapidly as she ascended, her gills working overtime as the oxygen level changed. Megalo caught up quickly, positioning himself beneath her as they'd practiced during their secret planning sessions. The shark would help her navigate the treacherous currents of the deep sea while conserving her strength for the long journey ahead. Behind them, alarm bells began ringing from the palace towers. They'd been discovered already. Faster, Megalo, she urged, even as her body adjusted to the changing depths. They needed to put enough distance between themselves and Fishman Island before her father inevitably sent guards to bring her back. The ascent was more taxing than she'd anticipated. Though merfolk could survive in both water and air, the transition between depths required acclimation. Shirahoshi's chest burned as they rose higher, the sunlight from the distant surface growing stronger with each powerful stroke of her tail. 3 hours into their journey, they encountered their first real obstacle, a pod of sea kings blocking their path. These weren't the docile ones that roamed near Fishman Island, kept peaceful by the mermaid princess's power. These were wild, territorial beasts of the deep ocean. Megalo faltered, veering to one side to avoid them. But Shirahoshi had come too far to turn back now. No, Megalo. Straight through. She closed her eyes, focusing on the power that stirred within her, the voice that could command the ocean's mightiest creatures. The Sea King sensed her presence, turning massive heads in her direction. One, a serpentine monster with rows of dagger-like teeth, swam closer, hostile intent clear in its predatory movements. Shirahoshi opened her eyes. Please, she said, her voice carrying through the water with unusual resonance. Let us pass. The effect was immediate. The Sea King stilled, their aggression melting away as they registered the command in her voice, not just the voice of any mermaid, but of Poseidon reborn. They parted, creating a corridor for her and Megalo. Thank you, she said softly, still uncomfortable with this power that felt both foreign and intimately part of her. They continued upward, Shirahoshi occasionally using her abilities when necessary but mostly relying on Megalo's guidance and her own determination. The shark seemed to draw strength from her resolve, pushing harder whenever her energy flagged. After what felt like an eternity, a different quality of light began to penetrate the water, not the artificial luminescence of Fishman Island, but real sunlight, fractured and dancing above them. Megalo, look! Shirahoshi gasped, pointing upward. The surface. With renewed vigor, they made their final push. The water grew warmer, lighter, until suddenly, Shirahoshi broke through the surface with a tremendous splash, water cascading from her hair and shoulders as she took her first breath of open air. The sensation was overwhelming, the warmth of genuine sunlight on her skin, the vastness of the real sky stretching infinitely above her. We did it, she cried, laughing as she floated in the open ocean. Megalo breached beside her, sharing in her triumph with excited circles. But reality quickly tempered her elation. They were in the middle of the ocean with no land in sight, and no sign of the Straw Hat Pirates. Their journey had only just begun. Shirahoshi pulled out her coral compass. According to the palace reports she'd secretly read, the Straw Hats had last been spotted heading toward an autumn island called Benico. She had no idea how far away that might be or even if they were still there. East, Megalo, she decided, pointing in the direction the compass indicated. We'll try east first. As they set off, Shirahoshi couldn't help but glance back, the bubbled silhouette of Fishman Island barely visible far below the waves. For the first time in her life, she was truly free, and truly alone. I'm not turning back, she whispered, more to herself than to Megalo. No matter what happens next. Commander Azran of the Marine stood on the deck of his battleship, his sharp eyes fixed on the surveillance Den Mushi's projection. The grainy image showed an enormous splash on the ocean's surface, followed by the unmistakable pink hair and tail of the mermaid princess. So, he said quietly, the ancient weapon has finally emerged. His executive officer shifted uncomfortably beside him. Sir, our orders were simply to monitor activity around Fishman Island, not to, our orders, Azran cut in smoothly, are to secure weapons that could threaten world stability. Would you not consider Poseidon such a weapon, Lieutenant? Of course, sir, but the diplomatic implications of seizing the Neptune princess, who said anything about seizing her? Azran's thin lips curved into a calculating smile. We're simply going to offer her protection. After all, a princess traveling alone is vulnerable to all manner of dangers. He turned to his communications officer. Send word to headquarters that we've spotted the mermaid princess outside Fishman Island's territory. Request permission to intercept for her safety. Yes, sir. Azran returned his gaze to the surveillance image, watching as Shirahoshi and her shark companion began moving eastward. And prepare a special containment tank in the hold. One suited for royalty. His fingers unconsciously traced the scar that ran from his temple down his neck, a permanent reminder of his last encounter with pirates who'd wielded power they didn't deserve. Set course to intercept, he ordered. But maintain distance for now. Let's see where our princess is heading with such determination. 3 days of ocean travel had taught Shirahoshi more about survival than 16 years in the palace. She'd weathered a storm that nearly separated her from Megalo, fended off curious pirates in a small scouting vessel, who'd fled when they realized just how massive she truly was, and rationed her supplies with careful precision. Now, as dawn broke on the 4th day, the welcome sight of an island appeared on the horizon. Look, Megalo, she pointed excitedly. Land. As they drew closer, Shirahoshi noted the island's autumn foliage, trees in brilliant shades of red and gold covering rolling hills. A busy port town sprawled along the coast, ships of various sizes docked in its harbor. This must be Benico Island, she said, consulting her now weathered map. Luffy-sama could be here. The challenge now was approaching without causing a panic. A giant mermaid wasn't exactly an inconspicuous visitor. We should wait until nightfall, she decided reluctantly. Then I can get closer to the harbor and look for the Thousand Sunny. They found a secluded cove on the island's eastern side, where rocky outcroppings provided some privacy. Shirahoshi settled into wait, munching on seaweed rations and watching fishing boats pass in the distance. Do you think I'm being foolish, Megalo? She asked, absently stroking the shark's rough skin. Chasing after someone who might not feel the same way. Megalo nudged her encouragingly. You're right. Even if Luffy-sama doesn't return my feelings, I needed to do this. To prove to myself that I could. She stared at the island, excitement and anxiety warring within her. I just hope they're still here. As dusk fell, Shirahoshi prepared to move closer to the harbor. She carefully braided her distinctive pink hair and wrapped herself in a massive cloak she'd brought. It wouldn't hide her completely, but it might prevent immediate recognition from a distance. Stay close, she told Megalo as they slipped from their hiding place. They approached the harbor from the south, keeping to deeper waters where her massive form wouldn't create suspicious waves. The port was still busy despite the late hour, lanterns illuminating docked ships as crews loaded and unloaded cargo. Shirahoshi scanned the vessels anxiously, looking for the distinctive lion figurehead of the Thousand Sunny. Ship after ship came into view, but none matched what she sought. Her heart sank. Had she come all this way for nothing? Then, just as she was about to retreat to reconsider her plans, she spotted it, anchored not at the main docks but in a natural cove beyond the harbor. The Thousand Sunny, with its cheerful lion figurehead and distinctive design. Megalo. There. She could barely contain her excitement. They're here. They're really here. She started swimming faster, then abruptly stopped. Now that she'd found them, what exactly was she going to say? Hello, I left my kingdom and family because I'm in love with your captain. Doubt crept in, momentarily paralyzing her. What if Luffy laughed at her feelings? What if the crew didn't want a giant mermaid complicating their journey? What if, a distant shout interrupted her spiral of insecurities? Looking toward the Sunny, she saw a familiar figure standing at the rail, pointing directly at her. Giant Mermaid. Usopp's distinctive voice carried across the water. Everyone. There's a giant mermaid watching us. Shirahoshi ducked lower in the water, but it was too late. More figures appeared at the rail, the green-haired swordsman, the orange-haired navigator, the skeleton musician, all staring in her direction. And then, vaulting over them all with a rubbery stretch of his limbs, came the person she'd crossed an ocean to find. Shirahoshi. Luffy's voice, filled with surprise and delight, sent her heart soaring. Is that really you? There was no hiding now. Gathering her courage, Shirahoshi rose further from the water, pushing back her hood. Hello, Luffy-sama, she called, her voice trembling slightly. I've come to find you. Luffy's face split into his characteristic wide grin. Without hesitation, he stretched his arms toward her, launching himself across the distance between the ship and where she floated. He landed with a small splash on Megalo's back, laughing. This is awesome. What are you doing here? Did you swim all the way from Fishman Island? His questions tumbled out rapid fire, his excitement palpable. Looking into his bright, curious eyes, all of Shirahoshi's carefully rehearsed explanations fled her mind. I left home, she blurted out. I want to see the world. With you. And your crew, she added hastily. Luffy tilted his head, studying her with unexpected seriousness. You ran away? Not exactly. Father knows, but... She twisted her hands nervously. It's complicated. Before Luffy could respond, a commotion from the Sunny drew their attention. The rest of the crew had lowered a small boat and were rowing toward them, their expressions ranging from shocked to delighted. Shirahoshi Chuan. Sanji's love-struck call reached them first. My mermaid princess has returned to me. We never left Fishman Island together, silly cook, Zoro grumbled from the same boat. Shut up, Mosshead. Nami stood up in the boat, nearly capsizing it. Shirahoshi. Is everything okay? Has something happened at Fishman Island? The genuine concern in their voices touched Shirahoshi deeply. These people barely knew her, yet they cared about her welfare. Nothing's wrong, she assured them as their boat reached Megalo. I needed to leave. To find my own path. She glanced at Luffy, who was still watching her with uncharacteristic thoughtfulness. To be brave, like Luffy-sama taught me. Robin climbed onto Megalo beside Luffy, her perceptive eyes taking in Shirahoshi's travel-worn appearance. You came all this way alone. With Megalo, Shirahoshi nodded. We've been traveling for days. Super dangerous for a princess. Frankie called from the boat, striking his signature pose. But super brave too. Chopper scrambled up next to Robin. Are you hurt anywhere? The pressure changes from such a deep ascent could cause serious problems. I'm fine, really, Shirahoshi insisted, though she appreciated the little doctor's concern. Luffy suddenly jumped to his feet, nearly slipping off Megalo's slick back. Wait. If you're here, who's ruling Fishman Island? My father is still king, Shirahoshi explained. I'm just taking some time away. More like causing an international incident, Nami muttered, though there was a hint of admiration in her voice. Brook's skeletal form rose from the boat, violin in hand. Such a romantic gesture deserves a song. Though I have no heart to feel romance. Yo-ho-ho-ho. Luffy crossed his arms, his face scrunching in that distinctive way it did when he was thinking hard about something. The crew fell silent, watching their captain. Even though he rarely exercised his authority as captain, in moments like these, his decision carried weight. Finally, he looked up, meeting Shirahoshi's anxious gaze. You really want to come with us? Even though it's dangerous? We're pirates, you know. People try to kill us all the time. I know, she said quietly. But staying locked in a tower was its own kind of danger. I never truly lived. Her voice grew stronger. I want to be free, Luffy-sama. Free to choose my own path, just like you. Something shifted in Luffy's expression, recognition, perhaps, of the same drive that had pushed him to sea in the first place. Well then. He grinned widely, placing his straw hat firmly on his head. I guess we've got a new friend joining us for a while. This'll be fun. The simplicity of his acceptance, so typically Luffy, made Shirahoshi's eyes fill with tears of relief and joy. But, Luffy, Nami interjected pragmatically, she's huge. How is she supposed to travel with us on the Sunny? We'll figure it out. Luffy declared with absolute confidence. Frankie can build something. Right, Frankie? The cyborg shipwright rubbed his chin thoughtfully. It'd be a super challenge, but, yeah, I might have some ideas. Perfect. Luffy turned back to Shirahoshi. See? No problem. As the crew began debating logistics, Shirahoshi caught Robin's knowing smile. The archaeologist moved closer, speaking softly so only the princess could hear. That's quite a journey to make for friendship alone, she observed, her tone gentle but perceptive. I wonder if there might be another reason you sought us out. Shirahoshi blushed deeply, her pale skin turning almost as pink as her hair. You don't need to explain, Robin assured her. But I should warn you, our captain can be rather dense about certain matters. Before Shirahoshi could respond, Luffy bounced over excitedly. Hey, Shirahoshi. Are you hungry? Sanji can make you something super tasty. That would be lovely, she smiled, her heart lighter than it had been in years. Great. Let's head back to the Sunny. Luffy stretched his arms toward the ship, ready to catapult himself back. Wait. Nami caught his rubbery limb. We need to think this through. We can't just bring a giant mermaid princess, who happens to be one of the ancient weapons, onto our ship without a plan. Why not? Luffy asked, genuinely puzzled. Because every marine and bounty hunter in the New World will be after us, you idiot. Nami bonked him on the head. They're already after us, Luffy pointed out reasonably, rubbing his head. Not like they will be if word gets out we're harboring Poseidon. The mention of her other identity, the power that had brought so much complication to her life, dimmed Shirahoshi's excitement. Perhaps this was a mistake, she said quietly. I don't want to bring trouble to your crew. Don't be stupid, Luffy said bluntly, making her blink in surprise. Trouble finds us anyway. At least this way we get to have fun together. He looked around at his crew. Right, guys? One by one, they nodded, some enthusiastically, others with resigned acceptance of their captain's decision. Then it's settled. Luffy declared. Shirahoshi joins the adventure. Now, about that food. Hidden behind a rocky outcropping several hundred meters away, a marine reconnaissance vessel observed the reunion through high-powered binoculars. Sir, the lookout reported into his den Mushi, confirmation that the Mermaid Princess has made contact with the Straw Hat Pirates. On the battleship floating just beyond the horizon, Commander Azrin received the news with cold satisfaction. Excellent. This simplifies matters considerably. Your orders, sir. Azrin studied the tactical map spread before him, where both Fishman Island and Benico were marked with red pins. Hold position and continue observation. Do not engage. He tapped a third location on the map. We'll intercept them at Galena Point, where the currents will force them into the narrow passage. And the Neptune army vessels pursuing the princess? Let them come, Azrin said dismissively. Their presence will only add to the confusion when we spring our trap. He looked up at his executive officer. Contact Vice Admiral Tsurugi. Tell him Operation Poseidon has entered its active phase. Yes, sir. As his subordinate hurried to relay the orders, Azrin returned to the window, gazing at the distant island where his quarry had just found temporary sanctuary. Soon, he murmured, we'll see if the power of an ancient weapon can match the power of absolute justice. Back on the Thousand Sunny, the Straw Hats had created a makeshift arrangement to accommodate their enormous guest. Frankie had quickly constructed a large floating platform attached to the ship's stern, where Shirahoshi could rest comfortably in the water while remaining close to the vessel. The crew gathered on deck as Sanji served a feast to welcome their unexpected visitor. Despite the initial awkwardness of her size, they'd adapted with the flexibility that characterized the Straw Hat Pirates. So you just decided to leave? Nami asked, passing a platter of seafood down to Shirahoshi. Just like that? Shirahoshi accepted the food gratefully. Not exactly. I've been thinking about it ever since you all left Fishman Island. But when the council started pressuring me about political marriages, I knew I had to make a choice. Political marriages? Sanji nearly dropped the tray he was carrying. What cruel demon would try to force my beautiful mermaid princess into a loveless union? It's quite common for royalty, Robin noted. Though I imagine it would feel particularly constraining after being literally constrained in a tower for so long. Shirahoshi nodded. I couldn't bear the thought of going from one cage to another. So you busted out. Frankie struck his signature pose. Super rebellious. Do your brothers know where you are? Chopper asked, concerned. Not exactly. Father knows I left, but he pretended I was in deeper meditation so I'd have time to get away. She looked down guiltily. By now they've probably realized I'm gone. They're gonna come looking for you, Zoro observed, taking a swig from his sake bottle. I know, Shirahoshi admitted. But I'm hoping that once they see I'm safe and happy, they'll understand. Luffy, who had been uncharacteristically quiet while stuffing his face with meat, suddenly looked up. Hey, Shirahoshi. Yes, Luffy-sama. Stop calling me that. Just Luffy is fine. He grinned. We're friends, right? Her heart skipped at the casual declaration of friendship. Yes. Luffy. Good. Then it's decided. You'll stay with us until you figure out what you want. He spoke with such certainty that no one, not even Nami, thought to argue. But, he added, pointing his meat bone at her seriously, you gotta pull your weight, like everyone else. No special princess treatment. That's the rule on my ship. Shirahoshi straightened, determination flashing in her eyes. I will. I can be lookout, or I can help navigate underwater currents, or call friendly sea kings to help in battles. Sea kings? Usopp choked on his drink. As in multiple? As in those giant monsters that eat ships for breakfast? That's actually quite useful, Robin mused. The power of Poseidon could be a tremendous asset. I don't want to be an asset, Shirahoshi said quietly but firmly. I want to be a friend. A crewmate. Luffy nodded, satisfied. That's the spirit. Now, who wants to play a game? I'm thinking tag, but underwater. You'll drown, you hammer, Nami reminded him. Oh yeah. He looked disappointed for only a second before brightening again. Then Shirahoshi can teach us mermaid games. As the evening progressed into night, Shirahoshi found herself surrounded by more laughter and genuine camaraderie than she'd experienced in her entire life. The Straw Hats argued, teased each other, broke into impromptu dance parties led by Brook's music, and generally created the kind of joyful chaos that had been entirely absent in the formal halls of the palace. Later, as most of the crew retreated to their quarters for the night, Shirahoshi floated beside the Sunny, gazing up at the stars that seemed so much brighter and closer than they had from beneath the ocean. Can't sleep? Luffy's voice came from above. He was sitting cross-legged on the rail, his ever-present straw hat silhouetted against the moon. It's all so new, she admitted. The air feels different. The stars look different. Yeah, it's pretty cool. He hopped down to her floating platform, settling beside her massive tail. Hey, I've been thinking. About what? About why you really came. He looked at her directly, his usually carefree expression serious. It's not just about seeing the world, is it? Shirahoshi's heart thundered in her chest. Was this it? Had he somehow sensed her feelings already? I don't know what you mean, she stammered. Luffy's intense gaze didn't waver. You came because you wanted freedom. Real freedom. He grinned suddenly. Just like me. That's why we get along so well. Relief and disappointment mingled in her chest. Of course he hadn't guessed her romantic feelings. As Robin had warned, Luffy wasn't exactly perceptive about certain matters. Yes, she agreed softly. Freedom. It's the best thing in the world, Luffy continued, looking out at the ocean. Better than meat, even. Well, almost. He laughed. That's why I'm gonna be the Pirate King. The Pirate King is the freest person on the sea. Despite her momentary disappointment, Shirahoshi couldn't help smiling at his enthusiasm. This was the Luffy she'd fallen for, straightforward, passionate about his dreams, and somehow able to make everyone around him believe anything was possible. I think you'll make a wonderful Pirate King. Luffy. He beamed at her. And I think you'll make a great pirate, Shirahoshi. Even if it's just for a little while. She wanted to tell him then, that she hoped it wouldn't be just for a little while, that her feelings ran deeper than friendship, but the words stuck in her throat. Instead, she asked, do you really think I can be brave enough? To be a pirate? Luffy tilted his head, genuinely puzzled by the question. You already are brave. You left your home all by yourself to follow your dream. That's super brave. But I still get scared. Everyone gets scared, he shrugged. Being brave isn't about not being scared. It's about being scared and doing the thing anyway. The simple wisdom in his words struck Shirahoshi deeply. For years, she'd equated her fears with weakness, never considering that facing them might be its own kind of strength. Thank you, she whispered. Luffy yawned widely. No problem. That's what friends are for. He stood, stretching. Get some sleep, okay? Tomorrow's gonna be a big adventure, we're heading to the next island. As he bounced back to the deck, Shirahoshi called after him, "Luffy?" "Yeah. I'm glad I found you." He grinned, the moonlight catching his smile. "Me too." "Night, Shirahoshi." "Good night, Luffy." As she settled into the comfortable netting Frankie had created for her, Shirahoshi felt a contentment she'd never known before. Whether or not Luffy ever returned her romantic feelings, she'd made the right choice in coming. Here, among these strange, wonderful pirates, she'd found something precious, the chance to discover who she truly was, beyond the titles of Princess and Poseidon. With that comforting thought, she drifted into sleep beneath the open sky, unaware of the gathering storms, both literal and figurative, that awaited them on the horizon. Commander Azrin stood over a meteorological chart, a satisfied expression on his usually stern face. "The seasonal typhoon will hit here," he indicated a point between Benico Island and their planned ambush location, approximately 14 hours after the Straw Hats set sail. With a mermaid princess aboard, they might try to dive beneath it, his tactical officer suggested. "Precisely why we've dispatched submarine units along this corridor," Azrin traced a path on the map. "They'll have no choice but to sail into our waiting arms at Galena Point." He looked up at his officers. "The ancient weapon and the upstart rookie who dares to protect her, both will learn the meaning of justice." His hand moved unconsciously to the scar on his neck, as it always did when he thought of pirates and the chaos they brought. "Sir," his communications officer interrupted, "urgent message from HQ, Vice Admiral Tsurugi's fleet has engaged Neptune Army vessels at the surface access point above Fishman Island. They're demanding the return of the princess." Azarin's eyes narrowed. The Fishman King sent his army after her that quickly? Interesting. He considered this development. "Tell Tsurugi to stall them with negotiations. We need those fishmen distracted until we secure the princess." As his officers hurried to relay the orders, Azarin returned to the window, watching as his battleship cut through the dark waters toward Galena Point. Soon, very soon, he would succeed where so many had failed, controlling the power that could command the sea itself. "Sleep well, princess," he murmured to the distant night. "Enjoy your taste of freedom while it lasts." Chapter 2, Surface World Dangers. Morning hit the thousands sunny with a riot of colors, brilliant orange and pink streaking across the sky as the sun hauled itself up from the horizon. Shirahoshi blinked awake, momentarily confused by the warmth on her face and the gentle rocking of the floating platform Frankie had built for her. No tower walls. No palace guards. Just open sky and endless possibility. It wasn't a dream, she whispered to herself, a giddy smile spreading across her face. "Morning, princess." Usopp called from the crow's nest. "Sleep okay out there?" Shirahoshi waved up at him. "Better than ever." The ship buzzed with morning activity. Sanji sang in the kitchen while preparing breakfast. Frankie checked the ship's systems with exaggerated hand gestures. Chopper and Robin watered plants in the small garden. And at the figurehead, Luffy sat cross-legged, staring eagerly toward the horizon. "Land soon," he announced without turning around. "I can smell adventure." Nami rolled her eyes as she consulted her maps. "You can't smell adventure." "But he's right, we should reach Petaluna Island by midday." "Petaluna?" Shirahoshi pulled herself higher against the ship's railing, accidentally splashing Zoro who was attempting to nap nearby. "Watch it," he grumbled, shaking water from his green hair. "Sorry." She covered her mouth, trying not to giggle at his disgruntled expression. "What's Petaluna Island like, Nami?" The navigator spread out her chart where Shirahoshi could see it. "It's famous for floating markets and supposedly has some of the most beautiful gardens in the New World. The eastern side has deep natural harbors where you should be able to swim comfortably." "Floating markets?" Shirahoshi's eyes widened. "Yep. Vendors in little boats selling everything you can imagine. Even a giant mermaid could go shopping there." Nami's eyes suddenly gleamed with calculation. "Actually, I wonder if we could charge people to see you." We could make a fortune, Nami. Chopper protested. Shirahoshi isn't a sideshow. Just thinking out loud, Nami shrugged, not looking particularly sorry. Sanji emerged from the kitchen, effortlessly balancing multiple plates. Breakfast for my lovely ladies. Shirahoshi-chuan, I've prepared a special seafood soufflé with coral berry compote. He dramatically slid down to her platform to present her portion, a massive serving that would have fed 3 normal humans. Thank you, Sanji-kun. It looks delicious. She accepted the plate, touched by his thoughtfulness. Anything for the beautiful princess of my heart. His eye transformed into a heart as he twirled back to distribute the remaining meals. Don't get used to the special treatment, Zoro smirked. Once Lover Cook gets over the initial excitement of having a mermaid around, you'll be stuck with regular portions like the rest of us. Not true. Sanji kicked at Zoro's head, which the swordsman dodged without opening his eyes. Shirahoshi-chuan will always receive my special attention. The familiar pattern of their bickering made Shirahoshi laugh. She'd been worried about fitting in, but the crew's casual acceptance made her feel like she'd always been there. Luffy stretched his arm back from the figurehead, snatching a piece of meat from Zoro's plate. Hey! The swordsman's eyes snapped open. Captain Tax. Luffy grinned, stuffing the stolen food into his mouth. Shirahoshi watched their interactions with fascination. In the palace, meals had been formal affairs with perfect manners and careful conversation. Here, breakfast included food theft, insults, and at least one attempted murder, Zoro lunging at Luffy with his swords half-drawn. Yet underneath it all was an unmistakable current of affection. Is it always like this? She asked Robin, who had settled nearby with a book. Actually, they're being rather well-behaved today, the archaeologist replied with a serene smile. I suspect they're trying not to frighten you off too quickly. Shirahoshi glanced at Luffy, now dangling upside down from the mast to avoid Zoro's reach. I don't think anything could frighten me away now. Robin studied her with those perceptive eyes. Not even the dangers that come with being a straw hat pirate. We don't exactly lead peaceful lives. After 16 years of peaceful boredom, I'm ready for some danger. Shirahoshi surprised herself with her own conviction. Robin nodded approvingly. Then I think you'll find today quite satisfactory. Before Shirahoshi could ask what she meant, Luffy's excited shout drew everyone's attention. Island. I see it. Petaluna. In the distance, a lush green landmass rose from the sea, surrounded by dozens of tiny boats with colorful sails. Those must be the floating market stalls. Nami exclaimed, lowering her telescope. Looks like we've arrived on a festival day. Festival. Luffy, Usopp, and Chopper cheered in unison, breaking into an impromptu dance of excitement. Shirahoshi felt her own anticipation building. Her first real island visit. Her first festival. How will I explore without causing a commotion? She worried aloud. Even on Fishman Island, her rare appearances outside the palace had created massive disruptions. Frankie struck his signature pose. Leave it to me. Super solution incoming. He disappeared below deck, returning moments later with what looked like an oversized metal backpack. Portable water bubble generator. I've been working on it since last night. You made that overnight? Shirahoshi gasped. When inspiration strikes, a super craftsman doesn't sleep. Frankie attached the device to a harness system. This'll create a bubble of seawater around your tail that'll let you swim through air for up to 6 hours. You'll still be big, but at least you won't be stuck in the harbor. Frankie, that's amazing. Her eyes filled with grateful tears. Don't cry yet. Let's make sure it works first. He began making adjustments to the machinery. As they approached the island, the crew prepared for arrival with practiced efficiency. Nami gave directions, Frankie readied the anchor, Zoro and Sanji, still arguing, prepared the gangplank. Remember, Robin cautioned Shirahoshi quietly, we're pirates. Not everyone will welcome us, especially with our reputation. But you saved Fishman Island. You're heroes. To some. To others, particularly the Marines, we're dangerous criminals. Robin's tone remained casual, but her eyes scanned the harbor with careful assessment. Just stay alert. When they finally docked in one of the deeper sections of the harbor, a small crowd had already gathered, pointing and whispering at the sight of the infamous pirate ship, and the giant mermaid princess floating beside it. So much for keeping a low profile, Nami sighed. Who cares about profiles? Let's explore. Luffy was already stretching his arms, ready to launch himself into town. Wait, you rubber idiot. Nami grabbed him by his vest. We need a plan. Splitting up might draw less attention. I'll stay with Shirahoshi, Luffy decided immediately. I wanna show her all the cool stuff. Something warm fluttered in Shirahoshi's chest at his eagerness to include her. I'll come too, Robin offered. An extra set of eyes might be useful. And I must accompany my sweet mermaid princess to ensure her safety. Sanji declared, hearts practically visible around him. Nami rubbed her temples. Fine. The rest of us will gather supplies and information. Meet back at the ship by sunset. She fixed Luffy with a stern look. And try not to cause an international incident this time. No promises. Luffy grinned, bouncing impatiently as Frankie helped Shirahoshi into the water bubble contraption. The device whirred to life, creating a shimmering bubble that encased her tail while leaving her upper body free. With careful movements, she found she could indeed swim through the air, the bubble moving with her. It works, she exclaimed, doing a small twirl that nearly knocked Usopp overboard. Watch the tail, he yelped, clinging to the railing. Sorry. But she was too excited to be truly apologetic. For the first time in her life, Shirahoshi was about to explore a human island, with Luffy as her guide, no less. Let's go. Luffy grabbed her hand without hesitation, pulling her toward the gangplank. His touch sent a jolt through her that had nothing to do with Frankie's invention. The floating market of Petaluna was even more spectacular than Shirahoshi had imagined. Hundreds of small boats bobbed in the harbor, each converted into a miniature shop selling everything from exotic fruits to handcrafted jewelry. Colorful banners stretched between vessels, creating a canopy of fluttering fabric overhead. Look at this. Luffy darted from boat to boat, examining wares with childlike enthusiasm. And this. And especially this. He held up a skewer of grilled meat, already half-eaten. Luffy, did you pay for that? Robin asked mildly. Nope. The guy gave it to me free when I told him I'd be Pirate King. He grinned, stuffing the remaining meat into his mouth. Sanji rolled his eyes. More likely he was too intimidated to argue with the idiot who helped take down Doflamingo. Despite Frankie's ingenious bubble contraption, Shirahoshi still attracted significant attention. Her massive size and distinctive coloring made anonymity impossible. But rather than the fear or awe she usually inspired, the locals' reactions ranged from curious to opportunistic. Giant Mermaid. Get your photo with the giant mermaid. Only 500 berries. A quick-thinking vendor had already set up a makeshift photography stand. Mermaid-approved sea charms. Guaranteed good luck on the waves. Is that Princess Shirahoshi from Fishman Island? The mermaid princess herself? This last question, shouted by a newsman with a notepad, made Shirahoshi freeze. She hadn't considered how quickly her identity might spread. Robin stepped smoothly in front of her. Just a large mermaid enjoying the festival. Nothing to see here. The reporter looked skeptical but backed away when Sanji glared at him. Perhaps we should move to somewhere less crowded, Robin suggested, nodding toward a path leading away from the harbor. Luffy grabbed Shirahoshi's hand again, pulling her along. Yeah. Let's check out those famous gardens. The path wound uphill through a colorful town built on terraces. The bubble around Shirahoshi's tail allowed her to navigate the narrow streets, though she had to be careful not to accidentally swipe market stalls with her enormous size. Sorry. Excuse me. Pardon me, she repeated as they made their way through the crowds. Despite the occasional difficulties, Shirahoshi couldn't stop smiling. Everything was so new, so vibrant. Street performers played lively music on unfamiliar instruments. Food vendors called out their specialties, filling the air with mouth-watering aromas. Children ran laughing between the stalls, occasionally stopping to point at the giant fish lady. Try this. Luffy thrust a skewer of glazed fruit toward her. Where did you get that? Sanji demanded. Paid for it this time. Luffy patted his noticeably lighter pocket. Nami gave me spending money. Shirahoshi accepted the treat, touched by his thoughtfulness. The fruit burst with sweetness on her tongue, nothing like the carefully prepared palace cuisine she was accustomed to. It's delicious, she exclaimed. Luffy beamed. Right? Surface food is the best. They continued uphill, eventually reaching the famous gardens that overlooked the harbor. Even Robin seemed impressed by the spectacular display, acres of flowers in every imaginable color, arranged in intricate patterns visible from above. Beautiful, Shirahoshi breathed, taking in the panoramic view. Yeah, pretty cool, Luffy agreed, though he was already distracted by a vendor selling roasted nuts nearby. Sanji sidled closer to Shirahoshi, hearts in his eyes. Not nearly as beautiful as you, Shirahoshi-chuan. Your radiance puts these mere flowers to shame. Thank you, Sanji-kun, she replied automatically, used to such compliments from the love-struck cook. Robin created a small chain of hands using her devil fruit power, passing a guidebook from a distant information stand. According to this, the gardens were designed to be viewed from above, telling the island's history through floral patterns. Shirahoshi studied the designs with new understanding. That section looks like waves meeting land, could that represent the island's founding? Very perceptive, Robin nodded approvingly. You have a good eye for symbolism. The unexpected praise made Shirahoshi blush. In the palace, she'd been the coddled princess, her every achievement exaggerated by flattering courtiers. Robin's straightforward acknowledgement of her intelligence felt more meaningful somehow. Luffy rejoined them, munching on his purchased snack. Hey, there's some kind of show starting down there. He pointed to a clearing where a crowd was gathering around a makeshift stage. The flower dance, Robin read from the guidebook. A traditional performance during the spring festival. Let's watch. Luffy was already pulling Shirahoshi toward the clearing, heedless of the commotion her size created as they navigated through the crowd. They found a spot at the edge where Shirahoshi's height actually gave them an advantage, she could see over the heads of the gathering spectators. The performance began with drums and flutes, dancers in petal-shaped costumes swirling across the stage in complex patterns. It's like they're telling a story, Shirahoshi observed, entranced by the graceful movements. Indeed, Robin nodded. The annual rebirth of the island after winter storms. Sanji had disappeared temporarily, returning with drinks for everyone. Fresh squeezed juice for the ladies. And whatever this is for the bottomless pit. He handed Luffy a suspicious-looking green concoction. Thanks. Luffy downed it in one gulp, then immediately turned blue. Water. Water. Serves you right for eating my portion at breakfast, Sanji smirked, casually handing over a water flask. As they watched the performance, Shirahoshi became aware of whispers and pointing from the crowd. At first, she assumed it was the usual reaction to her size, but the whispers seemed more urgent, more concerned. Princess of Fishman Island. Should tell the authorities. Massive bounty from the world government. Robin noticed too, her expression sharpening. We should move on, she murmured. We're attracting unwanted attention. Before they could leave, a commotion erupted at the far side of the clearing. Men in white marine uniforms pushed through the crowd, led by an officer with a scarred face. Straw Hat Luffy, the officer called. By order of Marine Headquarters, surrender the Mermaid Princess immediately. The festive atmosphere evaporated instantly. Civilians scattered, clearing a space between the pirates and the advancing Marines. Luffy stepped in front of Shirahoshi, his playful demeanor vanishing. No way. She's with us. The princess has been reported missing from Fishman Island, the officer continued, his voice carrying across the now quiet clearing. For her safety and the stability of underwater territories, she must be returned to her kingdom. Liar, Robin said quietly. They have no intention of returning you to Fishman Island. Shirahoshi felt cold fear creeping up her spine. How did they find us so quickly? Someone recognized you and reported it, Sanji muttered, moving to flank Shirahoshi protectively. The marine officer stepped forward, addressing Shirahoshi directly. Princess, I am Lieutenant Brock of Marine Special Division. Commander Azarin has been dispatched to escort you safely home. Please come with us willingly and avoid unnecessary conflict. Luffy cracked his knuckles. She already said no. She hasn't said anything, Brock countered. Princess, surely you don't intend to become a pirate? Think of your kingdom, your family. The word struck a nerve. Shirahoshi did feel guilty about the worry she must be causing her father and brothers. But returning with these Marines felt wrong, something in the lieutenant's eyes seemed calculating rather than concerned. She began uncertainly. She doesn't have to explain herself to you, Luffy interrupted. Shirahoshi makes her own choices now. The lieutenant's expression hardened. Very well. If diplomacy fails. He raised his hand, and Marines moved into attack positions around the clearing. Get Shirahoshi back to the ship, Luffy told Robin and Sanji. I'll handle these guys. Don't be ridiculous, Sanji lit a cigarette. There are at least 50 of them. Exactly. Shouldn't take more than 5 minutes. Luffy grinned, but the expression held none of his usual playfulness. Luffy. Shirahoshi began, not wanting him to fight because of her. Go with Robin and Sanji, he said without turning around. I'll catch up. Before she could protest further, Robin created multiple arms that gently but firmly guided Shirahoshi away from the clearing. He'll be fine, the archaeologist assured her. This is hardly his most challenging fight. They hurried through back alleys, Sanji scouting ahead to ensure their path remained clear. From behind came the unmistakable sounds of combat, Luffy's shouts and the crash of bodies flying through the air. We shouldn't have left him, Shirahoshi fretted. Trust in your captain, Robin advised. One of the first lessons of being a straw hat. But he's not really my captain, Shirahoshi pointed out. I'm just visiting. Robin gave her a knowing look but didn't contradict her. They had nearly reached the harbor when Sanji suddenly tensed, dropping into a fighting stance. We've got company. Ahead, blocking their path to the docks, stood another group of Marines led by a tall woman with a heavy rifle slung across her back. Captain Merida, Robin identified her. Known for her accuracy with long-range weapons and specialized ammunition. The famous Nico Robin, Merida nodded respectfully. I was hoping to avoid you. My business is with the princess, not the straw hats. Unfortunate, as the princess is currently under our protection, Robin replied coolly, crossing her arms in preparation for using her powers. Wait, Shirahoshi moved forward, surprising both her companions. I don't want anyone fighting because of me. Princess, Sanji started. No. She straightened to her full impressive height, the water bubble around her tail glimmering in the afternoon sun. I've spent my whole life hiding while others fought my battles. I won't do that anymore. Captain Merida smiled thinly. A noble sentiment, princess. But unnecessary. We're here to escort you home safely, not to harm you. If that's true, Shirahoshi challenged, then why send armed soldiers instead of diplomats? Why ambush us instead of approaching openly? The Marine captain's smile faltered slightly. The situation is complicated. Your sudden departure from Fishman Island has created diplomatic tension. Commander Azarin has been specifically tasked with resolving this matter discreetly. Commander Azarin? Robin's eyes narrowed. I've heard that name before. Wasn't he involved in the purge of the North Blue scholarly communities last year? Merida didn't confirm or deny. My orders are to secure the princess and await the commander's arrival. And if I refuse to be secured? Shirahoshi asked, her voice steady despite her racing heart. Then I'm authorized to use necessary force, Merida replied, her hand moving to her rifle. Though I'd prefer to avoid harming royalty. The threat hung in the air. Shirahoshi knew Robin and Sanji could fight, probably win, even, but the commotion would attract more marines. They needed to reach the Sunny without further confrontation. An idea struck her. Captain Merida, you seem reasonable. Perhaps we can compromise. Both Robin and Sanji shot her alarmed looks, but she continued. Allow me to return to my companion, Megalo, at your harbor. I left him watching our vessel. Once there, I'll hear what this Commander Azarin has to say. Merida considered this, suspicion evident in her eyes. And your pirate friends? Will accompany me, as they've been kind enough to ensure my safety thus far. After a moment's calculation, Merida nodded. Acceptable. But we'll escort you to the harbor. Shirahoshi glanced at Robin, who gave an almost imperceptible nod of approval. The negotiation had bought them time and movement toward their goal, the Sunny. The walk to the harbor was tense, marines flanking them on all sides. Shirahoshi kept her expression neutral, trying to project the royal dignity she'd observed in her mother and father during diplomatic situations. Where is this Commander Azarin? She asked as they approached the docks. En route from Marine headquarters, Merida replied. Expected to arrive by tomorrow morning. Tomorrow. That gave them the night to escape, if they could reach the Sunny safely. The familiar silhouette of the Straw Hat's ship came into view, Megalo circling anxiously nearby. But something was wrong, marine vessels had surrounded the Sunny, and on the deck. Guys! Usopp's panicked voice carried across the water. They've got us surrounded. Robin's expression darkened. A trap. This was never about negotiation. Of course not, Merida said coldly, dropping all pretense of diplomacy. The princess harbors the power of an ancient weapon. Did you really think we'd let her roam free with pirates? Anger surged through Shirahoshi, not just at the deception, but at being treated once again as an object to be controlled rather than a person with her own will. I am not a weapon, she said, her voice ringing with newfound authority. I am Shirahoshi, daughter of Neptune, princess of Fishman Island. And I decide my own fate. With that declaration, she raised her hand toward the sea. The marines tensed, weapons raised, but instead of attacking, Shirahoshi closed her eyes and concentrated. She'd never intentionally used her power as Poseidon before. It had always been something that happened accidentally, in moments of extreme emotion. But now, she deliberately reached for that connection, that ancient ability to communicate with the Sea Kings. At first, nothing happened. Then, a distant rumbling disturbed the water. Megalo stopped circling and stared out to sea, his shark instinct sensing the approaching danger before anyone else. What is she doing? Merida demanded, raising her rifle. Robin smiled mysteriously. Introducing herself, I believe. The water beyond the harbor suddenly erupted as a massive sea king, serpentine with glittering scales and teeth longer than swords, rose from the depths. It wasn't alone. Two more surfaced beside it, their enormous heads towering over the marine vessels. Civilians screamed, running from the docks. Marines froze in terror or fumbled with their weapons. Even Merida took an involuntary step backward. Please, Shirahoshi addressed the Sea Kings with the same internal voice she'd discovered during Hodi's attack on Fishman Island. Help us reach our ship safely. The largest sea king lowered its head in acknowledgement, then swept its massive tail through the water, creating a wave that pushed the marine vessels away from the Sunny. The other sea kings positioned themselves protectively, forming a corridor to the pirate ship. Now, Robin created a chain of arms, helping propel Shirahoshi toward the ship while Sanji launched himself into the air, raining kicks down on any marines who tried to follow. Chaos erupted as they made their dash for freedom. Marine rifles fired, bullets splashing into the water around them. The Sea Kings roared in response, their massive bodies shielding the escaping pirates. Aboard the Sunny, Nami was already preparing for immediate departure. Raise anchor. Frankie, get us moving. Super escape time. The cyborg shipwright engaged the ship's paddle system, the coup de burst primed for emergency use. As Shirahoshi reached the ship, Sanji and Robin close behind, a barrage of specialized ammunition suddenly whistled through the air, sea prism nets designed to entangle and weaken devil fruit users. Watch out! Shirahoshi called, but too late, one net enveloped Robin, sending her plummeting toward the water. Without hesitation, Shirahoshi dove, catching the archaeologist before she hit the sea. Robin's strength was rapidly fading from contact with the sea prism material. Hold on, Shirahoshi encouraged, carefully removing the net with her free hand while keeping Robin's weakened form above water. Thank you, Robin managed, her breathing labored. They reached the Sunny as Frankie engaged the engines, the ship surging forward through the gap created by the Sea Kings. Wait! Shirahoshi suddenly realized. Where's Luffy? As if summoned by her concern, a rubbery arm stretched from the distant shore, gripping the ship's railing. Moments later, Luffy catapulted himself aboard, landing with a triumphant grin despite his torn clothes and various bruises. Made it, he announced cheerfully. Those guys weren't so tough. You're late, you rubber idiot. Nami scolded, though relief was evident in her voice. Sorry. Got distracted by this really cool candy shop after I beat those marines. He held up a bulging bag of sweets as evidence. You stopped for candy during an escape. The navigator looked ready to strangle him. I got some for everyone. Luffy defended, apparently genuinely confused by her anger. Their bickering was cut short as more marine ships appeared at the harbor entrance, blocking their escape route to open sea. We're trapped, Zoro observed calmly, unsheathing his swords. Not quite. Nami's eyes gleamed with tactical assessment. Frankie, can the coup de burst get us over those ships? It'll be close with our extra passengers' weight, Frankie calculated, but super possible. Wait, Shirahoshi interjected. I have a better idea. She turned toward the Sea Kings who were still circling protectively nearby. Would you please help us one more time? The creatures responded immediately, diving beneath the marine blockade. With coordinated movements that suggested ancient intelligence, they surged upward, capsizing the vessels and clearing a path to the open ocean. Whoa! Luffy's eyes sparkled with excitement. That's so cool, Shirahoshi. Frankie didn't waste the opportunity, engaging the ship's engines at maximum power. The Sunny shot forward through the gap, leaving the chaotic harbor behind. Only when they reached open water did the crew finally relax, gathering on deck to assess their situation. That was an impressive display of power, Robin noted, recovered enough to join them though still moving gingerly. You commanded those Sea Kings with remarkable precision. Shirahoshi blushed at the praise. I wasn't sure it would work. I've never deliberately called Sea Kings before. Well, it was awesome. Luffy declared, bouncing around her excitedly. You were like, I am princess hear me roar, and then boom. Giant sea monsters everywhere. Despite the tension of their escape, Shirahoshi couldn't help laughing at his enthusiastic reenactment. Unfortunately, Nami interrupted, this means the Marines now have confirmation that you can control Sea Kings. They'll be even more determined to capture you. About that, Robin said seriously. The name Azrin concerns me. He's a special commander within Marine headquarters, tasked with acquiring powerful artifacts and individuals. He's ruthless, strategic, and obsessed with controlling ancient powers. Just another Marine jerk, Luffy shrugged, unconcerned. Not quite, Robin cautioned. He doesn't just follow orders, he has his own agenda. And now he's specifically targeting Shirahoshi. The mermaid princess felt a chill despite the warm evening air. Because of Poseidon? Robin nodded. The Marines can't officially acknowledge the existence of ancient weapons, it would cause panic. But unofficially, they'll do anything to control or neutralize such power. Let them try, Zoro said, patting his swords. They'll have to get through us first. The casual way he included her in their protection made Shirahoshi's eyes sting with grateful tears. These people had known her for such a short time, yet they risked everything to defend her freedom. Thank you, she said softly. All of you. I never meant to bring such danger to your crew. Danger follows us everywhere, Nami waved dismissively. At least this time it's for a good reason. Besides, Frankie struck his signature pose, making a super escape as part of the Straw Hat experience. As the others laughed, Luffy approached Shirahoshi, something unusual in his expression, a thoughtfulness that replaced his typical carefree grin. You were really brave back there, he said, his voice quieter than his usual boisterous tone. Using your powers to protect everyone. Her heart skipped at the admiration in his eyes. I just did what anyone would do. Nope, Luffy shook his head firmly. Most people would have surrendered to the Marines. You fought back. He grinned suddenly. You're getting less crybaby-ish every day. Coming from Luffy, it was high praise indeed. Shirahoshi laughed, any residual fear from their narrow escape melting away in the warmth of his approval. As night fell, the Straw Hats maintained maximum speed, putting distance between themselves and Petaluna Island. They'd set a course for their original destination, a remote island called Kujira that Nami believed would offer better hiding opportunities. Shirahoshi floated alongside the ship, gazing up at the star-filled sky. Despite the danger they'd faced, she couldn't regret her decision to leave Fishman Island. Today alone she'd experienced more excitement, more genuine connection, than in all her previous years combined. Can't sleep. Robin's voice came from the deck above. Just thinking, Shirahoshi replied. Everything's happening so fast. Robin climbed down to join her on the floating platform Frankie had constructed. Adventures tend to accelerate once you join this crew, she observed with a small smile. I suspect that's part of Luffy's unique energy, he bends time itself around his impatience. Shirahoshi giggled at the apt description. He does seem to rush headlong into everything. Including friendships, Robin noted. He doesn't gradually let people in, he decides they belong and that's that. She gave Shirahoshi a sidelong glance. Though he seems particularly protective of you. The mermaid princess felt heat rising to her cheeks. He's kind to everyone. True, Robin acknowledged. But he doesn't look at everyone the way he looks at you. Before Shirahoshi could ask what she meant, a commotion from the crow's nest interrupted their conversation. Ship approaching. Usopp called down, his voice tight with worry. And it's big. The crew sprang into action, Nami quickly assessing their position while Frankie readied the ship's defensive systems. Luffy bounded to the figurehead, peering into the darkness. I don't see anything, he complained. 3 o'clock, about a mile out, Usopp directed, his exceptional vision picking out details invisible to the others. Marine battleship, moving fast. How did they find us so quickly? Chopper worried, clutching his medical bag in preparation for potential injuries. They must have anticipated our course, Robin frowned. Commander Azarin is living up to his strategic reputation. Shirahoshi felt a stab of guilt. This is my fault. I should surrender myself before anyone gets hurt. Don't even think about it, Luffy's voice came sharp and commanding, a reminder that beneath his carefree exterior was the determined captain of the Straw Hat Pirates. "Nobody on my crew gets sacrificed. Ever. But I'm not really, you are," he cut her off, jumping down to land beside her floating platform. "Maybe not officially or whatever, but you're with us now. That makes you one of us." His expression softened slightly. "Besides, you think I'd let them take you back to some tower? That's not freedom." The simple conviction in his voice silenced her protests. In Luffy's mind, the situation was clear: Shirahoshi deserved freedom, Marines threatened that freedom, therefore Marines were the enemy. No diplomatic complications, no weighing of risks versus rewards. "Contact imminent," Usopp warned. "They're raising signal flags." A spotlight suddenly illuminated the Sunny from the approaching battleship, now clearly visible against the night sky. Its massive form dwarfed the pirate vessel, gun ports open and threatening. "Straw Hat Pirates." A voice boomed across the water through an amplified Den Mushi. "This is Commander Azurin of Marine Special Division. Surrender Princess Shirahoshi immediately or face the consequences of opposing world government authority." "That's him," Robin confirmed quietly. "The hunter of ancient powers himself." Luffy stepped to the railing, cupping his hands around his mouth. "Hey Commander, whatever. Shirahoshi stays with us. Go find your own mermaid." "Diplomatic as always," Nami muttered, pinching the bridge of her nose. The response from the battleship was immediate, a warning shot that splashed into the ocean meters from the Sunny's bow. "The next will not miss," Azurin's voice promised. "I have authorization to use lethal force against all Straw Hat Pirates if necessary. Only the princess needs to survive." Shirahoshi's blood ran cold at the casual threat against her friends. Using her massive strength, she pulled herself higher against the ship's side, making herself visible to the marine vessel. "Commander Azurin," she called, her voice carrying across the water with royal authority. "I am not your prisoner to claim. I travel with the Straw Hat Pirates by choice." For a moment, silence answered her. Then a figure appeared at the battleship's rail, a tall man with severe features and a distinctive scar running down the side of his face. "Princess Shirahoshi," Azurin's voice was smoother now, almost sympathetic. "I understand your desire for adventure. But your impulsive actions have consequences beyond your imagination." Something in his tone made Shirahoshi uneasy. "What do you mean?" "Even now, sanctions are being prepared against Fishman Island for losing their princess, their ancient weapon. Trade restrictions, increased marine presence, revocation of protected status." He let the implications hang in the air. "All because you wanted to play pirate with criminals." The words struck like physical blows. Shirahoshi had known there would be diplomatic repercussions for her departure, but hearing them enumerated so coldly made the reality hit home. "He's manipulating you," Robin said quietly. "This is what he does, finds weaknesses and exploits them." But the seed of doubt had been planted. Was her selfish desire for freedom, for Luffy's company, worth endangering her kingdom? "You have until dawn to make your decision, Princess," Azurin continued, clearly sensing her uncertainty. "Surrender willingly, and I'll personally ensure Fishman Island faces no repercussions. Continue with these pirates, and your kingdom will suffer for your choices." With that final threat, the spotlight switched off. The battleship maintained position, but made no further aggressive moves, a predator confident that its prey was already trapped. "He's lying," Luffy declared flatly, though for once he looked unsure. Politics and diplomatic consequences weren't his area of expertise. "Not entirely," Robin corrected gently. The world government could indeed impose sanctions on Fishman Island, especially if they believe King Neptune allowed his daughter, an ancient weapon, to join a pirate crew. Shirahoshi's thoughts raced. She'd been selfish, thinking only of her own desires, her feelings for Luffy, her wish for adventure. But a princess had responsibilities that couldn't be abandoned so easily. "Maybe," she began, her voice barely audible, maybe I should go with them. No. Luffy's response was immediate and fierce. They're not taking you back home, they want to use your powers. You'll just be in a different kind of tower. But my kingdom, we'll figure something out, he insisted, grabbing her hand. His smaller fingers wrapped around hers with surprising strength. Together. That's what crewmates do. The determination in his eyes nearly broke her resolve. But the princess in her, the part raised with duty and responsibility to her people, couldn't dismiss Azuren's threat so easily. I need to think, she said finally, gently withdrawing her hand from Luffy's. She slipped into the water, seeking the solitude of the depths to clear her mind. The cool embrace of the ocean welcomed her, a familiar comfort in a world that had suddenly become infinitely more complicated. Swimming beneath the sunny, Shirahoshi tried to sort through her conflicting desires. The freedom she'd found with the straw hats felt right, felt true, in a way nothing in her sheltered life ever had. But at what cost? Could she justify putting an entire kingdom at risk for her personal happiness? A splash nearby drew her attention. To her surprise, a small figure was swimming toward her, Luffy, struggling against his devil fruit weakness, determination evident even as the ocean sapped his strength. Alarmed, Shirahoshi darted forward, catching him before he sank too deep. Luffy! What are you doing? You could drown. Needed, to talk. To you, he gasped as she brought him to the surface, his limbs limp from the seawater's effects. You reckless fool, she scolded, holding him carefully above water. You could have called for me. Wouldn't be the same, he insisted, gradually regaining some strength as she supported him. Had to show you. I'm serious. About what? About not giving up. His eyes locked with hers, unusually intent. Marines always try this. They threaten the things you care about to make you surrender. But if you give in, they just keep doing it, finding new ways to control you. Despite his waterlogged state, the conviction in his voice was unmistakable. But my kingdom, she began. Will be protected, he finished firmly. By us. By your dad. By all the allies we've made. He managed a weak version of his usual grin. I promised Jinbe I'd take care of Fishman Island, remember? I keep my promises. Shirahoshi found herself believing him, despite the improbability of a single pirate crew defending an entire kingdom against world government sanctions. Besides, Luffy continued, you're finally free. You're seeing the world. You're having adventures. His expression softened. You're smiling more. Real smiles, not those fake princess ones. She hadn't realized he'd noticed the difference. The observation was surprisingly perceptive for someone usually oblivious to subtle emotional cues. I don't want you to go back to being sad and lonely, he said simply. You deserve to be happy, Shirahoshi. The sincerity in his voice broke through her remaining defenses. Tears welled in her eyes, not the frightened sobs of her crybaby days, but something deeper, born of gratitude and another emotion she wasn't quite ready to name. Thank you, Luffy, she whispered. So you'll stay? Hope brightened his face. I'll stay, she nodded. But we need a plan to protect Fishman Island. Great. Nami's good at plans. And Robin knows about political stuff. His typical confidence returned now that she'd agreed. We'll figure it out. As she carried him back toward the ship, Shirahoshi felt a curious sense of peace despite the marine battleship looming nearby. Whatever came next would be difficult, dangerous even, but she wouldn't face it alone. The strategy session in the Sunny's aquarium room lasted well into the night. Each crew member contributed ideas on handling both the immediate threat of Commander Azuren and the longer-term political implications for Fishman Island. We need to contact your father, Nami decided, marking locations on a map spread across the table. If King Neptune publicly announces he sent you as a diplomatic envoy to the surface, it undermines Azuren's claim that you've been lost or kidnapped. How do we get a message to Fishman Island fast enough? Usopp wondered. The news coup, Robin suggested. They have special birds that deliver to underwater kingdoms. Frankie nodded thoughtfully. And I could modify our transponder snail to transmit at frequencies that penetrate deeper waters. Shirahoshi watched with growing amazement as they systematically addressed each problem, working together seamlessly despite occasional bickering. No Royal Council meeting had ever been this productive, or this enthusiastically chaotic. What about the marine battleship currently trying to kill us? Zoro reminded them, ever practical. We still need to escape Azurin before dawn. I've been thinking about that, Shirahoshi spoke up, surprising herself with her own confidence. If I could call more Sea Kings, larger ones, they might be able to create enough disruption for us to slip away. Risky, Robin cautioned. Using your powers so openly only confirms what Azurin already suspects about your abilities as Poseidon. But super effective. Frankie countered. While the Marines deal with giant sea monsters, we could coup de burst out of here. I like it, Luffy declared, effectively ending the debate. Shirahoshi calls her fish friends, we zoom away. Simple. The navigator sighed, knowing better than to argue once Luffy had made up his mind. We'll need perfect timing. Azurin doesn't strike me as the type easily distracted by a few Sea Kings. Then we give him a lot of Sea Kings, Luffy grinned. A whole army of them. As dawn approached, the crew prepared for their escape attempt. Frankie readied the coup de burst, calculating the exact trajectory needed to maximize their distance from the marine vessel. Robin drafted a diplomatic message to King Neptune, careful to phrase Shirahoshi's diplomatic mission in terms that would satisfy world government officials. Throughout the preparations, Shirahoshi noticed Luffy watching her with unusual attentiveness, as if trying to memorize her features. Whenever she caught his eye, he'd quickly look away or pretend sudden interest in whatever task was nearest. Finally, as the first hints of morning light touched the horizon, she found him alone at the ship's stern. Luffy? Is something wrong? He turned, his expression uncharacteristically serious. Just thinking. About what? He hesitated, then blurted out, I don't want you to leave. The simple admission made her heart stutter. I already promised I wouldn't surrender to Azurin. Not just that. He fidgeted with his straw hat. After we deal with this marine guy. I don't want you to go back to Fishman Island either. Oh. She wasn't sure how to respond, her mind racing to interpret his meaning. Did he mean as a friend? As a useful ally with Sea King powers? Or something more? I like having you around, he continued, seemingly unaware of her internal turmoil. You make things. I dunno. Better. Coming from anyone else, it might have seemed an insignificant compliment. But Shirahoshi knew Luffy well enough now to recognize the depth behind his simple words. For someone whose primary concerns usually centered around adventure, food, and Nakama, admitting he specifically enjoyed her presence was tantamount to a declaration. Before she could formulate a response, Nami's voice called from the deck, they're moving. The marine ship is approaching. The moment broken, Luffy immediately shifted back to captain mode. Everyone to positions. Shirahoshi, ready with your Sea King friends. The marine battleship had indeed begun advancing, its massive form cutting through the dawnlit waters with ominous purpose. On its deck, Commander Azurin stood visible at the rail, his posture radiating confident authority. Time's up, Princess, his amplified voice carried across the water. Have you made your decision? Shirahoshi rose from the water beside the Sunny, drawing herself to her full impressive height. I have, Commander. I choose freedom. I choose my friends. Disappointment flickered across Azurin's scarred face, quickly replaced by cold determination. Then you choose the hard way. He raised his hand, signaling to his crew. All units, prepare to, he never finished the command. Shirahoshi closed her eyes, concentrating on the ancient power within her, the voice that could call to the ocean's most formidable creatures. But this time, she didn't just call a few nearby sea kings. She reached deeper, farther, her consciousness expanding across the surrounding waters in a way she'd never attempted before. "Come," she called silently. "Help us." At first, nothing happened. Then, the ocean began to tremble. Not in one spot, but everywhere, a pervasive rumbling that shook both ships and sent waves rippling outward in concentric circles. "What's happening?" Azarin demanded, gripping the rail as his massive ship began to pitch and roll. The answer emerged from the depths with terrifying majesty. Sea kings, not 3 or 4 as before, but dozens, broke the surface in a coordinated surge. Creatures of nightmare and legend, some larger than the marine battleship itself, surrounded the vessels in a living wall of scales, teeth, and ancient power. Even the straw hats looked shocked at the display. Shirahoshi herself hadn't expected such an overwhelming response to her call. "Holy crap," Usopp whispered, his knees knocking. "That's a lot of sea monsters. Super scary." Frankie agreed, though he sounded more impressed than frightened. The marine vessel erupted into chaos. Sailors abandoned posts, officers shouted contradictory orders, gunners swiveled cannons uselessly against targets too numerous and massive to engage effectively. Only Azarin remained calm, his calculating gaze fixed not on the Sea Kings but on Shirahoshi. "So the rumors are true," he called across the water. "You are Poseidon reborn." Shirahoshi met his stare unflinchingly. "I am Shirahoshi, Princess of Fishman Island. Friend to the Straw Hat Pirates." She gestured to the surrounding Sea Kings. "And yes, I can ask the ocean for help when needed." "You realize this display only confirms why you must be contained," Azarin responded, his voice colder than the deepest ocean trench. "Such power cannot be left in the hands of a naive girl, especially one consorting with pirates." "My power is not yours to control," Shirahoshi replied, surprising herself with the authority in her voice. "And I am no longer naive." With a mental request to her oceanic allies, the Sea Kings began moving in perfect coordination, creating a swirling maelstrom around the marine vessel. Water churned, waves crashed over the deck, and the massive battleship found itself trapped in a living whirlpool. "Now, Frankie," Nami ordered. Super coup de burst. The shipwright engaged the Sunny's emergency propulsion system. As the pirate ship launched into the air, propelled by the explosive force, Shirahoshi had one last glimpse of Commander Azarin's face. His expression wasn't anger or fear, but something more disturbing, a calculating patience, as if this setback were merely the opening move in a much longer game. Then they were airborne, the Sunny soaring above the waves, leaving the trapped marine vessel and swirling Sea Kings behind. "Woo-hoo!" Luffy cheered, clinging to the mast as they flew. "Best escape ever." Shirahoshi swam rapidly beneath the flying ship, keeping pace as best she could with Megalo's help. The Sea Kings would disperse once they were safely away, returning to their deep-water territories until called again. When the Sunny splashed down minutes later, they had put significant distance between themselves and Azarin's forces. The crew erupted into triumphant celebration, all except Robin, who maintained her usual reserved expression. "What's wrong?" Shirahoshi asked, noting the archaeologist's concern. "That was too easy," Robin replied quietly. "Azarin didn't become a special commander by being outmaneuvered so simply." "You think it's a trap?" Nami overheard, her own celebration diminishing. "I think," Robin said carefully, "that we should assume he allowed us to escape for his own reasons." The sobering assessment dampened the crew's enthusiasm. Even Luffy grew momentarily serious, scanning the horizon as if expecting another marine vessel to appear. "Well, whatever he's planning," Zoro decided, checking his swords, "we'll deal with it when it comes." "Right now," Nami agreed, consulting her log pose, "we need to reach Kujira Island by nightfall. It has natural cave systems where we can hide while figuring out our next move." As the Sunny resumed course, Shirahoshi found herself reflecting on the morning's events. She had used her powers more deliberately than ever before, commanding multiple Sea Kings with precision that would have seemed impossible days earlier. The frightened, sheltered princess she'd been on Fishman Island seemed increasingly distant, replaced by someone stronger, more confident. That was amazing, Luffy's voice interrupted her thoughts. He sat cross-legged on the floating platform beside her, grinning widely. You were like BAM. Sea Kings everywhere. His childlike enthusiasm made her smile despite her lingering concerns about Azarin. I didn't know I could call so many at once. I knew you could, he said with absolute certainty. You're super strong, Shirahoshi. Always have been. The simple faith in his statement touched her deeply. I don't feel very strong most of the time. That's 'cause you're thinking about it wrong. He tapped his chest. Real strength isn't about feeling strong all the time. It's about doing what needs doing even when you're scared. She considered this. Like diving into the ocean to talk to me even though water weakens you. Exactly. He beamed, pleased she'd understood. Being brave doesn't mean not being afraid. It means being afraid and doing it anyway. It was the second time he'd shared this particular wisdom with her, but hearing it now, after she deliberately used her powers to protect his crew, their crew, gave the words new resonance. Luffy, she began hesitantly, gathering courage for a question she'd been avoiding. Earlier, when you said you didn't want me to leave, what exactly did you mean? His expression shifted to that rare thoughtfulness that occasionally replaced his carefree demeanor. I meant. He frowned, struggling to articulate feelings he clearly wasn't accustomed to examining. I meant I like you being here. With us. With me. As a friend, she pressed gently. Yeah, but. He scratched his head in frustration. It's different. I have lots of friends. But with you, it's like. He brightened suddenly, finding an analogy he could work with. It's like meat. Excuse me? She blinked, completely lost. Yeah. I love all meat, right? But some meat is special. Like the super high-quality stuff Sanji saves for celebrations. That's my favorite. He nodded, satisfied with his explanation. You're like celebration meat. From anyone else, the comparison would have been insulting at best. But from Luffy, whose highest form of praise invariably involved food, it was practically a romantic declaration. Shirahoshi felt heat rising to her cheeks. Thank you, Luffy. I think you're special to me too. Good. He grinned, apparently oblivious to the emotional magnitude of their exchange. Then you should definitely stay with us longer. Maybe forever. Forever. The word hung between them, laden with implications neither was quite ready to explore fully. Before Shirahoshi could respond, Chopper's excited voice called from the crow's nest, island spotted. Kujira dead ahead. Luffy immediately bounced to his feet. New adventure. He stretched his arm up to grab the railing, pausing just before launching himself upward. Think about it, okay? Staying with us. With that, he catapulted back to the deck, leaving Shirahoshi floating beside the ship, her mind and heart racing with possibilities she'd never dared consider before. Forever with the Straw Hats. Forever with Luffy. The thought both terrified and exhilarated her. As Kujira Island grew larger on the horizon, a mountainous mass shrouded in mist, Shirahoshi made herself a promise. Whatever came next, whatever dangers Azarin presented, whatever complications her powers created, she would face them with the courage Luffy believed she possessed. The frightened princess had left Fishman Island seeking freedom and love. What she'd found was something even more precious, her own strength, and perhaps, if she were brave enough to grasp it, a future beyond anything she'd imagined in her tower beneath the sea. Commander Azarin watched impassively as his crew worked to repair the damage caused by the Sea King's assault. His battleship had weathered the attack better than most vessels would have, but significant repairs were still needed before they could resume pursuit. "Sir," his executive officer approached cautiously, "shall I order an immediate chase once repairs are complete?" "No," Azarin replied, his gaze fixed on the horizon where the Sunny had disappeared. "They'll be expecting that. Contact Vice Admiral Tsurugi, have his fleet move to position at these coordinates." He handed over a marked map. "But sir, that's nowhere near their current heading." "Because they're going to change course," Azarin smiled thinly. "Once they receive the news about Fishman Island." The officer frowned. "What news, sir?" Azarin turned, the scar on his face catching the morning light. "The news we're about to create. Order Communication Division to send this message to Marine Headquarters, highest priority." He handed over a sealed document. The officer's eyes widened as he read the enclosed orders. "Sir, these accusations against King Neptune are necessary," Azarin cut him off coldly. "The world government has tolerated Fishman Island's autonomy for too long, especially with an ancient weapon in their royal family. This situation merely provides the pretext we've been waiting for." "And the princess?" Azarin's expression hardened. "When she learns her kingdom faces martial law because of her actions, she'll surrender herself willingly. Her sense of responsibility will prove more effective than any chains we could forge." He turned back to the horizon, his scarred face impassive. "The Mermaid Princess has shown us the full extent of her powers today. She can indeed command sea kings as the legends claimed." A cold smile touched his lips. "Imagine such power harnessed in service to absolute justice. The age of pirates would end overnight." "And the straw hats, sir?" "Collateral damage," Azarin replied dismissively. "Their usefulness ends once the princess is secured." As his officers hurried to relay the new orders, Azarin remained at the rail, staring in the direction the Sunny had vanished. Behind him, repair crews worked frantically to ready the battleship for pursuit. But the commander felt no urgency now. The game had changed. The pieces were in motion. And Azarin had never lost a strategic engagement, especially when his opponent didn't even realize they were playing. "Run while you can, princess," he murmured to the empty horizon. "Your freedom has a very short expiration date." Chapter 3, Poseidon Awakens. Kujira Island loomed like a sleeping giant in the morning mist, its jagged mountains cutting sharp silhouettes against the brightening sky. The Thousand Sunny bobbed in a hidden cove on the island's eastern side, concealed by towering rock formations that curved protectively around the small beach. Shirahoshi floated in the deeper water of the cove, watching the Straw Hats set up a temporary camp on shore. Despite only being with them for a few days, she marveled at how effortlessly they'd adapted to her presence, Frankie building specialized equipment for her, Sanji preparing meals that accommodated her enormous appetite, everyone adjusting their conversations to include her. "Hey, Shirahoshi!" Luffy called, bouncing across the sand toward her. "Come see what we found." She swam closer to the beach, where the water was shallow enough for her to rest her arms on the sand while her tail remained submerged. "What is it?" "Check this out." He waved excitedly at a massive cave entrance partially hidden by vegetation. "Nami says these caves run all through the island, and some of them are underwater too. You could explore inside the mountain while we check out the forest." His enthusiasm was infectious. "That sounds wonderful," she smiled, though a nagging worry remained at the back of her mind. Commander Azarin's threat about sanctions against Fishman Island hadn't faded despite their successful escape. Luffy, with his uncanny ability to read her moods, tilted his head. "What's wrong? You've got that worried face again." "I'm just concerned about my kingdom," she admitted. What if Azarin wasn't bluffing about the sanctions? Robin's handling it. Luffy said with complete confidence. "She sent that bird message to your dad, remember? Once everyone knows you're on a diplomatic, what did she call it? Diplomatic outreach mission," Shirahoshi supplied. "Yeah, that. Once they know you're doing princess work and not just having fun, those marine jerks can't do anything." He plopped down on the sand beside her. Besides, your dad's super strong, and he's got your brothers and the Neptune army. They can handle themselves. His simple faith was reassuring, even if it overlooked the complexities of international politics. That was Luffy's gift, reducing overwhelming problems to solvable pieces through sheer force of will. You're right, she nodded, choosing to embrace his optimism. Father would never allow the Marines to intimidate him. Exactly. So stop worrying and let's explore. Before she could respond, Nami called from their makeshift camp. Luffy. News coup incoming. A seabird circled overhead, the distinctive hat marking it as part of the delivery service that distributed newspapers across the world's oceans. It swooped down, dropping a rolled paper into Nami's outstretched hand. Strange, Robin remarked, joining the navigator. News coup doesn't usually deliver to uninhabited islands. Maybe it recognized the ship, Nami suggested, unrolling the paper. Luffy groaned. If they raised my bounty again, Grandpa's gonna be super mad. But Nami wasn't laughing. Her expression darkened as she scanned the front page. Everyone, you need to see this. Especially you, Shirahoshi. Something in her tone sent a chill through the mermaid princess. She pulled herself further onto the beach as the crew gathered around. What's it say? Zoro demanded, peering over Nami's shoulder. The navigator's voice was grim as she read the headline aloud. World government imposes military occupation on Fishman Island following royal conspiracy allegations. Shirahoshi's heart stopped. What? Robin took the paper, reading quickly. According to this, Marine forces under Vice Admiral Tsurugi have established control over Fishman Island's main cities. The world government claims to have evidence that King Neptune secretly arranged his daughter's defection to pirate forces as part of a conspiracy to use the ancient weapon Poseidon against surface nations. That's ridiculous. Shirahoshi protested, her voice rising. Father would never, of course it's ridiculous, Robin agreed calmly. It's clearly fabricated by Azurin to pressure you. But the occupation appears to be real. Sanji struck a match against his shoe, lighting a cigarette with trembling hands. Does it say anything about Neptune or the princes? Robin continued scanning the article. King Neptune has been confined to the palace for questioning. Prince Fukaboshi and his brothers are reportedly cooperating with authorities. They've taken my family hostage, Shirahoshi whispered, horror dawning. Because of me. Not because of you, Nami corrected fiercely. Because of Azurin's obsession with controlling Poseidon. Luffy, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, suddenly snatched the newspaper. His eyes narrowed as he studied the grainy photograph showing marine ships surrounding Fishman Island's bubble. This is bad, he declared with simple finality. We promised Jinbe we'd protect Fishman Island. We have to go back. The directness of his solution cut through Shirahoshi's spiraling guilt. She looked up, meeting his determined gaze. Go back, she repeated. Yeah. He nodded firmly. Your kingdom's in trouble, so we help. That's what friends do. But it's because of me, doesn't matter why, Luffy interrupted. What matters is fixing it. The other Straw Hats exchanged glances. Challenging a marine occupation force wasn't a small undertaking, even for a crew that had toppled warlords and infiltrated Impel Down. Luffy, Nami said carefully, we're talking about a full military operation. There could be dozens of warships, thousands of marines. So? He looked genuinely puzzled by her concern. We'd be walking into a trap, Usopp pointed out. Azurin is obviously trying to lure Shirahoshi, back to Fishman Island. Of course he is, Luffy agreed. That's why we're going. Robin's lips curved in a slight smile, understanding his logic before the others. You intend to spring the trap on purpose. Yep. He grinned. They think we'll sneak in trying to avoid them, so instead we'll go charging straight at them. They'll never expect that. Because it's completely insane, Zoro noted, though he was already checking his swords with a predatory smile. Actually, Robin mused, there's a certain strategic advantage to being unpredictable. And with Shirahoshi's ability to command sea kings. The mermaid princess straightened, determination replacing her initial shock. I'll do whatever it takes to free my family and kingdom. That's the spirit. Luffy clapped her on the shoulder. We go in, kick Azarin's butt, free your dad, and make the Marines leave. Simple. Nothing is ever simple with this crew, Nami sighed, though she was already reaching for her maps. If we're really doing this, we need a proper plan. I've got a plan, Luffy insisted. It's called, beat everyone up until we win. A better plan, Nami clarified, bopping him lightly on the head. As the Straw Hats gathered around the navigator, debates erupting about the fastest route to Fishman Island, Shirahoshi felt a strange calm settle over her. The situation was dire, the odds overwhelming, yet she felt none of the paralyzing fear that would have consumed her just a week ago. These people, her friends, were willing to risk everything to help her kingdom. Not out of duty or politics, but simply because they cared. It was time she showed the same courage. I think, she said, her voice cutting through the crew's discussion, should be the one to lead us into Fishman Island. All eyes turned to her, surprised by the authority in her tone. What do you mean? Chopper asked. I mean, Shirahoshi continued, straightening to her full impressive height, that this is my kingdom and my responsibility. I'll return openly, with you as my escort rather than me as your companion. If I claim I was on a diplomatic mission as planned, and that you were acting as my guardians on the surface world, it undermines Azarin's entire narrative. Robin nodded slowly. Clever. You're not a defector or a kidnapping victim, you're a princess returning from an official journey with her chosen security detail. Exactly. I am still the mermaid princess, after all. For the first time, Shirahoshi embraced the title not as a burden but as a source of power. And if necessary, I am also Poseidon. The determination in her voice brought a proud smile to Luffy's face. See? Told you she was brave. It's still incredibly dangerous, Nami warned. Azarin won't abandon his plans just because you show up with a good cover story. No, Shirahoshi agreed. But it forces him to operate more carefully. He can't simply seize me without revealing his true intentions to everyone watching. A public confrontation, Robin nodded approvingly. It could work, particularly if we can ensure maximum visibility. The Reverie delegates. Nami suddenly exclaimed. According to the paper, representatives from several nations are visiting Fishman Island to assess the situation. If we time our arrival during their inspection, Azarin would be constrained by diplomatic protocol, Robin finished. At least initially. A plan began to take shape, not Luffy's straightforward, beat everyone up approach, but a more nuanced strategy that played to Shirahoshi's royal status while leveraging the crew's strengths. We'll need to move quickly, Robin cautioned, checking the newspaper's date. The delegation arrives in 3 days. Then what are we waiting for? Luffy bounced impatiently. Let's go save Fishman Island. The descent to Fishman Island was nothing like Shirahoshi's secret escape days earlier. This time, she swam proudly ahead of the Thousand Sunny, which followed in the protective bubble Frankie had reinforced for deep ocean travel. No hiding, no sneaking, a princess returning home with her head held high. Megalo swam nervous circles around her, clearly sensing the tension of their mission. The faithful shark had been relieved to see her safe after their hurried departure from Petaluna Island, and now seemed determined to stay within protective distance. It's going to be okay, Megalo, she assured him, though her own nerves fluttered as they approached the massive downward current that would carry them to the ocean floor. Through the Sunny's bubble, she could see the Straw Hats preparing for arrival. Zoro sharpening his swords. Nami studying ocean currents. Sanji preparing travel rations in the kitchen. Luffy, being Luffy, bouncing excitedly between crew members despite the gravity of their mission. Their confidence bolstered her own. These weren't just powerful pirates, they were her friends, people who believed in her even when she'd struggled to believe in herself. As they descended deeper, the familiar bioluminescence of the ocean depths began to illuminate their path. Normally a comforting sight, now it carried an ominous edge. Somewhere below, Marines occupied her homeland, her family held captive in their own palace. "We're approaching the outer perimeter," Robin's voice came through the waterproof Den Mushy Frankie had modified for Shirahoshi. "Marine patrol ships ahead." Shirahoshi squinted through the darkened waters. Indeed, the silhouettes of military vessels now appeared, forming a blockade around the usual entrance routes to Fishman Island. "Remember the plan," Nami's voice followed. "No hiding, no sneaking. You're a princess returning from a diplomatic mission." "Right." Shirahoshi took a deep breath, calming her nerves. "I am Princess Shirahoshi of Fishman Island, returning with my surface world escorts." She repeated the words like a mantra as they continued their descent. The marine ships grew larger, searchlights scanning the waters around the island's bubble barrier. It wouldn't be long before they were spotted. "Shirahoshi," Luffy's voice came through the Den Mushy next, unusually serious. "If anything goes wrong, I'm coming to get you. No matter what. Promise." His absolute certainty settled something inside her. "I know, Luffy." A searchlight suddenly swept across her position, freezing when it illuminated her distinctive form. Alarms immediately sounded from the nearest patrol ship. "Here we go," she murmured, straightening her posture and fixing her expression into one of royal dignity. Marine divers deployed from the ships, armed with sea prism stone weapons and specialized underwater gear. They surrounded her at a cautious distance, weapons raised. "Halt and identify yourself," one ordered through a voice amplifier. Shirahoshi raised her chin. "I am Princess Shirahoshi of the Ryugu Kingdom, returning from a diplomatic mission to the surface world. These are my escorts." She gestured to the Sunny. The Marines exchanged uncertain glances. Clearly, they'd been briefed to expect a frightened princess trying to sneak home, not one boldly announcing her arrival with pirates in tow. "You will remain here while we contact Commander Azarin," the lead diver finally declared. "Unacceptable," Shirahoshi replied with an authority that surprised even her. "I am the princess of this kingdom, returning to my home. You have no jurisdiction to detain me." "Ma'am, we have orders." "Your orders," she interrupted, "do not supersede my royal authority within Fishman Island territory. I will proceed to the palace immediately to address the concerning military presence around my kingdom." The Marines hesitated, clearly unprepared for this scenario. Shirahoshi pressed her advantage. "You may escort us if you wish, but we are proceeding." Without waiting for a response, she swam forward, Megalo at her side and the Sunny following close behind. After a moment's confusion, the Marines formed an escort formation, though whether they were honoring her royal status or maintaining the pretense of control remained unclear. "Nice." Luffy's excited voice came through the Den Mushy. "You totally boss-moded those guys." Despite the tension, Shirahoshi smiled at his characterization. Boss mode indeed. As they approached the main entrance to Fishman Island's bubble, more marine forces gathered. This time, a higher-ranking officer appeared, one wearing the insignia of a captain. "Princess Shirahoshi," he addressed her formally, "Commander Azarin requests your immediate presence at the administrative center." "I will meet with the commander," she replied evenly, "after I have seen my father. I understand King Neptune is being held in the palace." The captain's expression tightened. "The king is assisting with our investigation. For your safety, the commander insists." "My safety," Shirahoshi cut in, her voice carrying across the water, "is guaranteed by both my royal status and my escorts." She gestured to the Sunny, where the straw hats were now visible through the bubble, watching the exchange intently. "Pirates cannot enter Fishman Island during this security operation," the captain stated flatly. "They will remain outside." Through the Den Mushy, Shirahoshi heard Nami whisper, "We expected this. Stick to the plan. Very well, Shirahoshi conceded. My escorts will remain here temporarily. But I remind you that under international maritime law, diplomatic envoys cannot be separated from their protection without consent from all involved nations. The captain blinked, clearly surprised by her knowledge of diplomatic protocols. Shirahoshi silently thanked Robin, who had coached her on these legal details during their journey. I'll relay your position to the commander, he finally said. Please proceed to the palace entrance. An honor guard will meet you there. As the captain swam away, Shirahoshi turned to face the Sunny. Through the bubble, Luffy gave her a thumbs up, his confident grin visible even at a distance. You're doing great, Nami's voice came through the Den Mushi. We'll follow the secondary plan now. Be ready for our signal in approximately 2 hours. Remember, Robin added, your goal is to reach your father and assess the situation. Don't confront Azarin directly if possible. And if he tries anything, Luffy chimed in, just yell really loud and I'll come punching. Shirahoshi nodded, both to acknowledge their instructions and to convey confidence she didn't entirely feel. With a final glance at her friends, she turned toward the bubble wall of Fishman Island, Megalo faithfully at her side. The Marines formed a tight formation around her as she passed through the bubble barrier. The familiar sensation of transitioning from ocean to the island's interior washed over her, but everything else felt wrong. The usually bustling Fishvalley Hills entrance plaza was eerily quiet, Marine checkpoints established at every intersection. Citizens hurried past with downcast eyes, none of the usual cheerful greetings or excited whispers that typically accompanied her rare public appearances. The occupying force had changed her kingdom in just a few days. A formal Marine escort awaited her, led by a stern-faced officer who bowed stiffly. Princess, welcome back to Fishman Island. I am Lieutenant Commander Satori, assigned to escort you to the palace. Thank you, Lieutenant Commander, she replied with the formal politeness her mother had taught her for official functions. Please lead the way. As they proceeded through the main thoroughfare toward the palace, Shirahoshi observed her kingdom carefully. Marine patrols everywhere. Shops closed or operating under supervision. The vibrant energy of Fishman Island replaced by tense silence. Citizens recognized her, of course. Whispers followed her passage, eyes widening with surprise or relief. She held herself regally, acknowledging her people with nods and gentle smiles, trying to convey reassurance she wasn't certain she could deliver. The Coral Palace loomed ahead, its familiar spires now shadowed by marine flags. The sight sent a surge of anger through her that she carefully controlled. This was her home, her family's legacy for generations. To see it under foreign occupation. Princess, Lieutenant Commander Satori interrupted her thoughts as they reached the palace gates. Commander Azarin will meet you inside. He has many questions about your diplomatic mission. The skepticism in his voice was clear, but Shirahoshi maintained her composure. I look forward to clearing up any misunderstandings. First, however, I wish to see my father. The king is in the throne room, Satori replied carefully. The commander is with him now. Perfect. If she could confront Azarin with her father present, in the formal throne room rather than some private interrogation chamber, it would strengthen her position considerably. The palace interior was crawling with Marines, their presence incongruous against the ancient coral architecture and underwater decorations. Palace staff moved hurriedly about their duties under watchful military eyes, casting hopeful glances at Shirahoshi as she passed. When they reached the massive doors of the throne room, Satori paused. Princess, I should warn you. The situation is delicate. The commander is under considerable pressure from Marine headquarters to resolve this matter quickly. Was that a hint of sympathy in his voice? Shirahoshi studied him briefly. Thank you for the warning, Lieutenant Commander. I assure you, I want nothing more than a swift resolution myself. He nodded, then pushed open the doors. The throne room, normally a place of dignified calm, buzzed with activity. Marine officers huddled around tactical displays. Communication specialists monitored Den Mushi transmissions. And at the center, seated on his throne but surrounded by armed guards, King Neptune watched it all with barely concealed fury. Father! Shirahoshi couldn't contain herself, rushing forward only to be blocked by marine guards crossing their weapons. Shirahoshi! Neptune's eyes widened, relief and concern battling in his expression. Are you harmed? Where have you been? Before she could answer, a cool voice cut through the room. An excellent question, Your Majesty. One we've all been quite eager to have answered. Commander Azarin stepped from the shadows beside the throne, his scarred face even more intimidating in person. He moved with calculated precision, every step communicating absolute control. Princess Shirahoshi, he bowed slightly, the gesture more mocking than respectful. How convenient that you've returned just as we were discussing the implications of your absence. Shirahoshi drew herself up to her full height, towering over everyone in the room. Commander Azarin. I understand there's been some confusion about my diplomatic mission to the surface. Diplomatic mission? Azarin's eyebrow raised. Is that what we're calling your defection to the Straw Hat Pirates now? There was no defection, she stated firmly. I embarked on a cultural exchange visit to better understand surface world customs, with the Straw Hat crew acting as my security detail given their familiarity with our kingdom. Neptune's eyes narrowed slightly, quickly understanding her strategy. Indeed. As we discussed before my daughter's departure. Azarin's smile never reached his cold eyes. How interesting that no official record of this diplomatic mission exists in the kingdom's archives. Or that the princess left in the middle of the night, pursued by her own guards. The mission required discretion, Shirahoshi countered smoothly, reciting the explanation Robin had crafted. Given recent tensions between surface and underwater nations, a public announcement might have invited unnecessary complications. Complications. Azarin repeated the word, testing it. Like associating with notorious pirates wanted for crimes against the world government. The Straw Hat Pirates saved Fishman Island from Hody Jones, Shirahoshi reminded him. Their actions earned them the trust of the royal family and our citizens. They were the logical choice for surface guides. A tense silence followed as Azarin studied her. Shirahoshi met his gaze steadily, refusing to be intimidated despite the rapid beating of her heart. A convenient explanation, he finally said. Unfortunately, evidence suggests otherwise. Your kingdom harbors one of the ancient weapons, a power that cannot be allowed to fall into pirate hands. I am not a weapon, Shirahoshi stated firmly. I am the princess of this kingdom. You are Poseidon. Azarin's voice hardened. Capable of commanding sea kings, a power you've demonstrated repeatedly in recent days. Such ability must be properly supervised for the safety of all nations. Neptune strained against his restraints. You dare speak of safety while occupying a peaceful kingdom? While holding its king prisoner in his own throne room? Necessary precautions, Azarin replied dismissively, given the conspiracy we've uncovered. A plot to use the ancient weapon Poseidon against surface nations, coordinated between the Ryugu kingdom and pirate elements. That's absurd. Neptune thundered. Is it? Azarin turned back to Shirahoshi. The princess leaves secretly, joins forces with one of the most dangerous pirate crews in the New World, and demonstrates her ability to command sea kings against marine vessels. The evidence speaks for itself. Shirahoshi realized with growing alarm that Azarin had no intention of acknowledging her diplomatic cover story. He'd committed fully to his conspiracy narrative, using it to justify the military occupation regardless of what she said. Where are my brothers? She asked, changing tactics. Something flickered in Azarin's eyes, satisfaction. Prince Fukaboshi and his brothers are secure, cooperating with our investigation from separate facilities. Separated and isolated. Divide and conquer. I demand to see them, Shirahoshi said, royal authority entering her voice. You're in no position to make demands, princess. Azarin's tone remained pleasant despite the harshness of his words. In fact, your return simplifies matters considerably. Now we can proceed with Phase 2 of our security operation. Phase 2. Neptune demanded. Azarin turned to the marine officers nearby. Prepare the transport chamber. The princess will be relocated to a secure facility for evaluation. You cannot remove my daughter from Fishman Island. Neptune roared, straining against his restraints with such force that even the marines guarding him took a step back. I'm afraid I can, Azarin replied calmly. By order of Marine Headquarters, under Special Directive 447 regarding ancient weapons and threats to global security. Shirahoshi felt cold dread settling in her stomach. This was exactly what Robin had warned might happen, Azarin using official-sounding protocols to legitimize kidnapping her from her own kingdom. Commander, she said carefully, removing me against my will would violate numerous international agreements regarding the sovereignty of the Ryugu kingdom. Agreements, Azarin noted, that depend on Fishman Island remaining a non-threat to surface nations. Your power changes that equation. You cannot simply, I can and I will. All pretense of diplomacy vanished from his voice. Marines, secure the princess for transport. Guards moved toward Shirahoshi, specialized restraints designed for her size at the ready. She backed away, remembering Robin's advice, delay. Create a scene. Wait for the signal. The Reverie delegation, she declared loudly. They're arriving today to assess the situation. What will they report when they find you kidnapping the princess during their inspection? Azarin paused, his expression darkening. How did you know about the delegation? News travels fast, she replied evasively. I imagine they wouldn't be pleased to discover the true nature of your security operation. It was a calculated risk. The newspaper had mentioned the delegates, but not their exact arrival time. Shirahoshi was banking on Azarin's uncertainty about how much she knew. The commander studied her carefully, then smiled thinly. The delegation has been delayed. Unfortunate weather conditions. They won't arrive until tomorrow, by which time you'll be safely aboard my command ship, en route to a secure facility. Shirahoshi's heart sank. Their timing was off, the Straw Hat's plan had depended on the diplomats being present to constrain Azarin's actions. Now, Azarin continued, gesturing to the guards, we've indulged this charade long enough. Secure the princess. Prepare for immediate transport to the surface. The Marines approached again, sea prism stone restraints ready. Shirahoshi glanced desperately toward her father, who struggled futilely against his own bonds. Shirahoshi, Neptune called to her, remember what your mother taught you. A true ruler never, a Marine stepped forward, silencing the king with a warning gesture. Never surrenders their dignity, Shirahoshi finished mentally, drawing strength from her father's truncated message. As the guards reached for her, Shirahoshi made a decision. The original plan had failed, the diplomatic delegation wasn't coming to witness Azarin's overreach. It was time for the contingency plan. She closed her eyes, concentrating on the innate connection to the sea that defined her power as Poseidon. Unlike previous instances where she'd called nearby sea kings for immediate help, this time she reached deeper, sending a specific message, not to the sea kings, but to someone else. Now, Luffy. We need you now. When she opened her eyes, Azarin was watching her with narrowed suspicion. What are you doing? He demanded. Shirahoshi smiled serenely. Surrendering with dignity. The commander's eyes widened in sudden alarm. Restrain her immediately. The palace shook with a tremendous boom that rattled coral decorations from the walls. Alarms blared throughout the complex as panicked voices shouted over Den mushy communicators. Report. Azarin barked at a communications officer. Sir. Multiple explosions at the main bubble entrance. The barrier integrity is, the officer pressed his earpiece closer. Sir, it's the Straw Hats. They've breached the island defense perimeter. Azarin's composure cracked, rage flashing across his scarred face. How? The entire area is surrounded by marine vessels. A second, closer explosion rocked the palace, sending marines stumbling for balance. What's happening? Neptune demanded, hope replacing the defeat in his eyes. Shirahoshi allowed herself a small, satisfied smile. That would be my escort, coming to check on my diplomatic well-being. Azurin's cold eyes fixed on her with newfound understanding. You were stalling. This entire conversation was a delaying tactic. A princess, Shirahoshi replied, channeling both her royal upbringing and Robin's calm confidence, always has a contingency plan. The throne room doors burst open as a marine officer rushed in, panic evident in his voice. Commander! The Straw Hats have breached the palace perimeter. There, the rest of his warning was cut short as the wall beside him exploded inward, debris and water spraying across the room. Through the newly created hole stretched a familiar rubbery arm, followed moments later by the grinning face of Monkey D. Luffy. Shirahoshi, he called, his voice echoing through the chamber. We came to get you. The sheer audacity of the entrance, punching directly through the palace walls instead of navigating hallways, left the Marines momentarily stunned. Azurin recovered first. All units. Priority target Straw Hat Luffy. Lethal force authorized. Guards scrambled to position themselves between Luffy and Shirahoshi, rifles raised. But they'd barely moved when multiple hands sprouted from their bodies, courtesy of Robin's devil fruit powers, twisting weapons away and immobilizing key joints. Through the breach followed the rest of the Straw Hats, Zoro cutting through reinforced doors with terrifying ease, Sanji's kick sending Marines flying, Frankie's mechanical enhancements blazing with weaponry, all of them moving with the coordinated precision of a crew that had faced impossible odds together countless times. You guys took forever. Shirahoshi called, relief flooding her voice despite the chaos erupting around them. Sorry. Luffy grinned, stretching his arms to knock aside 3 Marines simultaneously. We had to pick up some friends on the way. Friends? Shirahoshi blinked in confusion. Her question was answered as more figures poured into the throne room, familiar faces that sent her heart soaring with hope. Brothers, she gasped. Prince Fukaboshi led his siblings Roboshi and Manboshi into the chamber, their expressions fierce as they engaged the Marines surrounding their father. Behind them came the ministers of the left and right, along with Neptune army soldiers loyal to the crown. How? Shirahoshi stared in disbelief. We had a little detour before coming here, Robin explained, appearing beside her as sprouted hands continued to neutralize nearby threats. Nami suggested we locate and free your brothers first to create a proper, diplomatic incident that even Azurin couldn't easily explain away. Smart thinking, splitting up the royal family, Zoro commented as he cut through restraints binding Neptune. Too bad we like putting families back together. Freed from his bonds, King Neptune rose to his full, imposing height, reclaiming his trident from a nearby marine with a forceful swipe. Commander Azurin, the king's voice boomed throughout the chamber, your occupation of my kingdom ends now. Azurin, surrounded by his rapidly diminishing forces, maintained his cold composure. This changes nothing. You're simply adding insurrection against the world government to your existing charges of conspiracy. The only conspiracy, Fukaboshi declared as he joined his father, is your fabricated pretext for military occupation. A pretext, added a new voice from the doorway, that we find most concerning. All eyes turned to see a delegation of formally dressed officials entering the throne room, representatives from surface kingdoms, their expressions grave as they surveyed the chaotic scene. The Reverie delegation, Robin identified them quietly to Shirahoshi. They arrived early, Nami's weather predictions proved more accurate than the Marines' intelligence. Azurin's expression tightened. This is a security operation sanctioned by Marine headquarters. The delegation was advised to delay their inspection. We received no such advisory, replied an elegant woman bearing the insignia of the Alabasta Kingdom. In fact, We accelerated our schedule when rumors reached us of unauthorized military action against a sovereign world government affiliate nation. The diplomatic representative spread throughout the room, documenting the armed marines, the damage to the palace, and most damningly, the restraints that had bound the king and were intended for Shirahoshi. It appears, noted a bespectacled man from the Sakura kingdom, that we've interrupted not a security operation but an attempted coup against the legitimate rulers of Fishman Island. Azurin's composure finally cracked. This kingdom harbors an ancient weapon. The princess herself is Poseidon, capable of controlling sea kings that could devastate surface nations. We acted under special directive. No such directive exists, interrupted a severe-looking woman with the emblem of a world government legal attaché. At least, none that has been properly filed and authorized through appropriate channels. Understanding dawned across the room. Azurin had overreached, operating on his own authority while cloaking his actions in official-sounding mandates. Commander, the Alabastan representative continued, on behalf of the Reverie Nations, we formally request your immediate withdrawal from Fishman Island pending a full investigation into these unauthorized actions. Azurin's eyes darted around the room, calculating options that were rapidly diminishing. His gaze settled on Shirahoshi, cold hatred replacing his previous calm manipulation. You think this changes anything? He snarled. You are still Poseidon. Your power still represents an existential threat. This diplomatic farce merely delays the inevitable. Before anyone could react, he drew a concealed weapon, a specialized harpoon gun loaded with what appeared to be a sea prism stone projectile. If I can't contain you, he declared, aiming directly at Shirahoshi, then neutralizing you will have to suffice. Everything happened in an instant. Azurin fired. Luffy shouted a warning. Neptune and Fukaboshi lunged forward, too distant to intercept. And Shirahoshi, who once would have frozen in terror, reacted. She didn't close her eyes. She didn't scream. Instead, she reached for her power, not the voice that commanded sea kings, but the innate connection to water itself that all merfolk possess to some degree. As Poseidon, that connection was magnified 100-fold. The water molecules in the air around her responded to her will, condensing instantly into a shield of liquid that caught the harpoon mid-flight, slowing and then stopping its momentum. The room fell silent, all eyes fixed on the suspended projectile floating in the water barrier Shirahoshi had created. That's new, Luffy commented with impressed admiration. Azurin stared in disbelief. Impossible. Poseidon's power is limited to commanding sea kings, not manipulating water itself. Perhaps, Shirahoshi replied, her voice steady despite her racing heart, there's more to being Poseidon than the ancient texts recorded. Or perhaps you simply underestimated what a mermaid princess can do when protecting those she loves. With a flick of her hand, she sent the harpoon clattering harmlessly to the floor. Azurin's momentary shock gave way to calculating rage. He reached for another weapon, but never completed the motion. Luffy's fist connected with his jaw with a sickening crack, sending the commander flying across the throne room to impact the far wall with bone-jarring force. That's for threatening my friend, Luffy declared, his typically cheerful demeanor replaced by the dangerous intensity that reminded everyone why this seemingly carefree young man carried such a massive bounty. Marine forces, witnessing their commander's defeat and surrounded by both Straw Hat pirates and Neptune army loyalists, began laying down their weapons. The diplomatic representatives moved quickly to establish order, coordinating with Prince Fukaboshi to secure the palace while documenting the unauthorized occupation. Princess Shirahoshi, the Alabastan representative approached, bowing respectfully. On behalf of the Reverie Nations, I extend our sincere apologies for this violation of your kingdom's sovereignty. Rest assured, Commander Azurin's actions will be thoroughly investigated. Thank you, Shirahoshi replied with genuine royal dignity. The Ryugu kingdom appreciates the prompt intervention of our allied nations. As the diplomats conferred with Neptune about immediate steps to remove the remaining marine presence from Fishman Island, Luffy bounced over to Shirahoshi, his serious expression already replaced by his characteristic grin. That water shield thing was awesome, he exclaimed. When did you learn to do that? Just now, actually, she admitted, still somewhat surprised by what she'd accomplished. I didn't know I could until I tried. That's how all the best powers work, Luffy nodded sagely, as if imparting great wisdom. You just do the thing and see what happens. His simplistic approach to extraordinary abilities made her laugh despite the tension still lingering in the room. Thank you for coming, she said softly. For saving my family and kingdom. Luffy looked genuinely confused. Of course we came. You're one of us now. The simple statement warmed her heart in ways she couldn't fully express. One of us. Not just a friend or ally, but truly part of their odd, wonderful family. Across the room, Azarin was being restrained by Reverie security forces, his cold eyes fixed on Shirahoshi with undimmed hatred. This isn't over, he called to her. The world government won't ignore the threat you represent. Today's diplomatic theater changes nothing about what you are. Shirahoshi met his gaze steadily. You're right about one thing, Commander. I am Poseidon, but that power exists to protect, not destroy. You never understood the difference. As Azarin was led away, Fukaboshi approached his sister, pride evident in his expression. Little sister, when did you become so formidable? When she stopped being a crybaby and started being awesome, Luffy interjected before she could answer, earning him an amused look from the Merman Prince. I had good teachers, Shirahoshi replied, smiling at both her brother and Luffy. Both family and friends. Neptune joined them, his massive form still imposing despite the visible strain of his recent captivity. Shirahoshi, my daughter. Your mother would be so proud of what you've become. The mention of Queen Otoheim brought tears to Shirahoshi's eyes, not the uncontrolled sobs of her younger self, but quiet tears of pride and determination. I hope so, father. She straightened, making a decision that had been forming since they'd first received news of Fishman Island's occupation. And I hope you'll understand what I must do next. Neptune studied her face carefully. You wish to leave again. It wasn't a question. The king knew his daughter well enough to read the resolve in her expression. Yes, she confirmed. Not just for adventure or personal freedom this time. Azarin is right about one thing, the world government won't simply forget about Poseidon. As long as I remain on Fishman Island, our kingdom will be vulnerable to those who seek to control my power. Fukaboshi frowned. But where would you be safer than here, surrounded by family and our army? With us, Luffy stated confidently. Nobody messes with my crew and gets away with it. Your crew. Neptune raised an eyebrow, looking between his daughter and the pirate captain. Shirahoshi took a deep breath. Father, I wish to formally request your blessing to join the Straw Hat Pirates, not as a temporary guest or diplomatic envoy, but as a true member of their crew. The throne room quieted as her declaration carried across the space. The Straw Hats, who had been assisting with securing the palace, paused in their activities, turning toward the royal family with expressions ranging from surprise to delight. About time. Nami called with a grin. We already built all that special equipment for her. Super decision. Frankie struck his signature pose. Neptune stroked his beard thoughtfully, studying his daughter's determined expression. You understand what you're asking? To become a pirate is to stand against the world government, to live as a fugitive in many parts of the world. I understand, Shirahoshi nodded. But after today, I'm already their target regardless of my official status. At least with the Straw Hats, I can learn to properly control my abilities while experiencing the world Mother always wanted us to see. And your duties as princess? Your royal responsibilities can be fulfilled through diplomatic channels, she countered. Fukaboshi has always been better suited to governance than I am. I can serve our kingdom better by building alliances across the world and mastering the power I've inherited. Neptune exchanged glances with his sons. Fukaboshi nodded slightly, a silent endorsement of his sister's reasoning. After a long moment, Neptune sighed heavily. You are so like your mother, determined to bridge worlds no matter the personal cost. He straightened, royal authority entering his voice. Very well. As king of the Ryugu kingdom, I grant you permission to join the Straw Hat Pirates as an official representative of Fishman Island. Joy surged through Shirahoshi, but Neptune held up a hand to continue. However, there must be conditions. You will maintain regular communication with the palace. You will return for important state functions. And, his gaze shifted to Luffy, your captain must swear to protect you with his life. Luffy stepped forward without hesitation. I already promised that when we first met her. I keep my promises. The simplicity and certainty of his response seemed to satisfy Neptune, who nodded gravely. Then it is decided. Shirahoshi could hardly contain her excitement. She turned to Luffy, who was grinning widely. So I'm officially part of your crew now? Yep. He nodded enthusiastically. Though you kinda already were. The official stuff is just for your dad. His casual dismissal of formal protocols was so typically Luffy that Shirahoshi couldn't help laughing. In his world, bonds formed through shared adventures and loyalty meant more than any ceremonial declarations. There remains the matter of Fishman Island's security, Fukaboshi noted, bringing the conversation back to immediate concerns. With Commander Azran's forces withdrawing, we must ensure no similar incursions occur. The Reverie delegation has authorized an independent security force to assist during the transition, Robin informed them, joining the discussion. And I believe several ally nations have offered naval support to deter further marine aggression. Additionally, Sanji added, the news of what happened here will spread quickly. The world government can't afford another public relations disaster after Azran's unauthorized occupation. They'll be more careful next time, Zoro warned, but they won't give up entirely. Not when an ancient weapon is involved. Let them try, Luffy said with characteristic confidence. We'll kick their butts again if they do. As the discussion continued regarding Fishman Island's immediate security needs, Shirahoshi found herself reflecting on the extraordinary journey that had brought her here. Just days ago, she'd been a sheltered princess dreaming of adventure and freedom. Now she stood as a revealed Poseidon, an awakening force of nature, and the newest member of the infamous Straw Hat Pirates. More importantly, she'd found a place where she belonged, not because of her royal birth or legendary power, but simply for who she was. The celebration in Fishman Island Central Plaza continued well into the night, citizens rejoicing in their liberation from marine occupation and the safe return of their princess. Food and drink flowed freely, music filled the air, and for the first time in days, genuine laughter echoed through the kingdom. Shirahoshi found herself at the center of it all, receiving the grateful acknowledgments of her people not with shy embarrassment as she once would have, but with the dignified grace of a princess coming into her own. They really love you, Nami observed, joining her at the edge of the plaza where Shirahoshi could observe the festivities without her massive size disrupting the dancing. They're just happy to be free again, Shirahoshi replied modestly. No, Nami shook her head. They're proud of you. Word has spread about how you stood up to Azran, how you helped save the kingdom. She smiled mischievously. The crybaby princess who became a pirate hero. It's a good story. I had help, Shirahoshi reminded her, nodding toward where Luffy was entertaining a group of children by stretching his face into ridiculous expressions. Speaking of which. Nami's voice took on a teasing quality. You and our captain seem to have grown quite close. Heat rushed to Shirahoshi's cheeks. We're friends, she said carefully. Aha, Nami hummed knowingly. Friends who look at each other when they think no one's watching. Before Shirahoshi could formulate a suitably vague response, Luffy himself bounded over, a plate piled high with food in each hand. Hey, he greeted cheerfully. This party's almost as good as the one after we beat Hody. Try this fish thing, it's amazing. He thrust one of his overloaded plates toward Shirahoshi. I'll leave you two, friends, to enjoy the celebration, Nami winked, slipping away before Shirahoshi could protest. Luffy, oblivious to the navigator's insinuations, plopped down beside Shirahoshi at the water's edge. Your dad throws great parties. He's in a celebratory mood, Shirahoshi smiled. Not just because of the kingdom's liberation, but because my brothers were safely recovered. Family's important, Luffy nodded seriously around a mouthful of food. A comfortable silence settled between them as they watched the festivities. Several of the Straw Hats had joined in local dances, Frankie teaching merfolk children his signature moves, Brook playing alongside Fishman Island musicians, Chopper riding on Usopp's shoulders as they paraded through the crowd. Shirahoshi. Luffy's voice was unusually contemplative. Yes. Did you really mean it? About joining our crew permanently? She turned to look at him, surprised by the question. Of course. Unless you've changed your mind about wanting me to join. No. His response was immediate and emphatic. Definitely want you with us. It's just. He frowned, struggling with concepts more complex than his usual straightforward thinking. Being a pirate isn't always parties and adventures. Sometimes it's really dangerous. People try to kill us a lot. I know, she replied softly. I've seen some of that danger already. Yeah, but that was just one marine jerk. There are lots more out there, plus other pirates, sea monsters, crazy island tribes. He counted off threats on his fingers until he ran out and shrugged. Just a lot of fighting, is what I'm saying. Shirahoshi studied him carefully. Luffy, are you worried about me? He fidgeted with his straw hat. Maybe a little. You're really strong with your Sea King friends and that new water shield thing, but you're also. He gestured vaguely. A crybaby, she supplied with a small smile. Not anymore, he corrected firmly. But you're still nice. Like, really nice. Pirate life isn't always nice. The concern behind his words touched her deeply. This was Luffy, fearless, carefree Luffy, genuinely worried about her well-being. I may be nice, she acknowledged, but I'm not fragile. Not anymore. These past days have taught me that I'm stronger than I knew. She met his gaze directly. And I'll only get stronger traveling with you. Luffy considered this, then broke into his characteristic grin. Yeah. You will. His concern seemingly addressed, he returned to devouring his food with enthusiastic abandon. Shirahoshi watched him with affectionate amusement. His ability to move from deep concern to carefree joy in an instant was part of what made him Luffy, and part of why she'd fallen for him. Besides, she added quietly, there's nowhere I'd rather be than with you and the others. He paused mid-bite, looking up at her with an unexpectedly perceptive expression. Because you like us? Or because you like me? The directness of the question caught her completely off guard. What? Robin said you might have special feelings for me, Luffy explained matter-of-factly. Like how Hancock keeps asking me to marry her, except less scary. Shirahoshi's face flamed with embarrassment. Had she been that obvious? And had Robin really discussed her feelings with Luffy directly? She swallowed hard, deciding that if Luffy could be direct, so could she. Yes. I have special feelings for you, Luffy. You showed me kindness when I was alone, believed in me when I didn't believe in myself, and helped me find courage I didn't know I had. Luffy nodded, absorbing this information while continuing to eat. That's what Rayleigh called, being in love. He explained it once when we were training. Said it's like wanting meat all the time, but the meat is a person. He frowned. It sounded really confusing. Despite her nerves, Shirahoshi couldn't help laughing at his characterization. It is confusing sometimes. So do you want to be my girlfriend or something? He asked with the same casual tone he might use to ask if she wanted to explore an island. Her heart skipped several beats. Do you want me to be? Luffy considered the question with surprising seriousness, setting aside his now empty plate. I never really thought about girlfriend stuff before. Always focused on becoming Pirate King. He looked up at her, unusually thoughtful. But I like having you around. You make me happy. And I get this weird feeling when you smile at me, kinda like before a good fight, but different. It wasn't the most romantic declaration, but coming from Luffy, it was extraordinary. Shirahoshi felt hope blossoming in her chest. So yeah, he concluded with sudden certainty. I think I want you to be my girlfriend. If you want to. I do, she said softly, happiness threatening to overflow. Very much. Great. He grinned broadly. So now we're girlfriend and boyfriend and captain and crew member. That's super efficient. His practical take on their new relationship status made her laugh again. Only Luffy would view romance as an efficiency gain. There is one problem though, he added, his expression growing serious again. What's that? She asked, suddenly worried. You're really big and I'm normal-sized. How do people kiss when there's such a big difference? The unexpected question, so practical yet so intimate, sent heat rushing to her cheeks again. I'm not sure. We could figure it out together. Luffy nodded enthusiastically. Yeah. I'm good at figuring stuff out. He stretched his neck upward, bringing his face level with hers. Like this? Before Shirahoshi could respond, he leaned forward and planted a quick, innocent kiss on her lips. It lasted only a moment, but sent her heart racing nonetheless. There. He looked pleased with himself. That wasn't so hard. Shirahoshi touched her lips, still feeling the brief warmth of the contact. No, not hard at all. From across the plaza came a crash followed by Sanji's outraged voice, "You rubber bastard. How dare you kiss the beautiful mermaid princess?" Oh, Luffy grinned, not looking particularly concerned. Sanji's jealous. Should we explain? Shirahoshi asked, watching the cook storm toward them with fiery rage in his visible eye. Nah, he'll figure it out, Luffy shrugged. Besides, running from Sanji when he's mad is good training. With that, he sprang to his feet, stretching one arm to grasp a distant building. See you later, girlfriend, he called cheerfully before launching himself away, a furious Sanji in pursuit. Shirahoshi watched them go, laughter bubbling up from deep within her. If this was pirate life with the straw hats, chaotic, unpredictable, but filled with genuine connection, she couldn't wait for more. Dawn broke over Fishman Island with gentle rays filtering through the bubble barrier, casting shimmering patterns across the kingdom below. On the Thousand Sunny, final preparations for departure were underway. Shirahoshi floated beside the ship, now fitted with Frankie's upgraded companion vessel, a specially designed platform that could be towed behind the Sunny while providing her with comfortable accommodations suited to her size. The water circulation system maintains optimal oxygen levels, the cyborg shipwright explained proudly, showing off his creation. And these stabilizers prevent excessive rocking even in rough seas. Super comfortable. It's wonderful, Frankie, Shirahoshi marveled at the detailed craftsmanship. Thank you for making this. Nothing's too good for our newest Nakama, he declared, striking his signature pose. On the shore, the royal family had gathered for formal farewells. Neptune, Fukaboshi, Roboshi, and Manboshi stood with the ministers of the left and right, along with other palace officials. Shirahoshi swam to meet them, emotion tightening her throat as she faced her family. Father, brothers, thank you for understanding. Neptune stepped forward, his massive form bending to embrace his daughter. You have grown so much in such a short time, Shirahoshi. Your mother would be bursting with pride. I'll make you both proud, she promised, returning the embrace. And I'll come back to visit often. See that you do, Fukaboshi said, his typically stern expression softening. The palace will seem empty without you. But considerably less damp from all the crying, Roboshi teased gently, earning him a splash from Shirahoshi's tail. I don't cry that much anymore, she protested, though her eyes were indeed growing misty. The Minister of the Right has prepared some official documents, Neptune informed her, as the pufferfish Fishman stepped forward with a waterproof case. Your diplomatic credentials, identifying you as Fishman Island's official envoy to surface nations. And, the Minister of the Left added, a royal decree formalizing your dual status as both Princess of the Ryugu Kingdom and crew member of the Straw Hat Pirates. Shirahoshi accepted the documents with surprise. You prepared all this overnight? We had some assistance, Neptune nodded toward Robin, who stood watching from the Sunny's deck. Your archaeologist friend is quite knowledgeable about international diplomatic protocols. These credentials should provide some legal protection, Fukaboshi explained. While they won't prevent all world government harassment, they establish your official status and rights under maritime law. It was a thoughtful gesture, her family finding ways to support her chosen path while providing what protection they could. Thank you, she said softly, carefully stowing the documents in the waterproof bag she'd wear during their journey. From the Sunny came Nami's voice, tides turning. We need to depart within the hour to catch the optimal current. The moment of parting had arrived. Shirahoshi embraced each of her brothers in turn, whispering private goodbyes and promises to write often. Finally, she turned back to her father. I'll make you proud, father. I'll learn to control my powers, to be the kind of Poseidon who protects rather than destroys. Neptune placed a massive hand on her head, as he had when she was a small child. You already make me proud, daughter. Now go find your own way, as your mother always wanted for all her children. With a final embrace, Shirahoshi returned to the Sunny, where the crew waited to begin their next adventure. All aboard. Who's coming aboard? Frankie called, engaging the ship's engines. As they moved toward the bubble wall that separated Fishman Island from the ocean beyond, citizens gathered along their route, cheering and waving farewell to their princess. Unlike her secretive departure days earlier, this time Shirahoshi left with the full blessing of her kingdom, waving back with joyful tears that no longer embarrassed her. Luffy bounded to the ship's rail beside her. Ready for the next adventure, Shirahoshi? She looked at him, this extraordinary young man who had changed her life so completely, and felt certainty settle in her heart. Ready, Captain. The honorific made him grin wider. Hey everyone, he called to the crew. Shirahoshi called me Captain. That makes it official. As if the kissing didn't already confirm it, Nami teased, making Shirahoshi blush and Sanji groan dramatically. Where to first, Captain? Shirahoshi asked as the Sunny approached the bubble barrier. Luffy pointed upward, toward the distant surface. Wherever the sea takes us. That's the best part of freedom, getting to choose as we go. As they passed through the bubble wall, leaving Fishman Island behind, Shirahoshi felt no fear, only exhilaration for the journey ahead. She'd left home seeking freedom and love, and found both in abundance among these remarkable pirates. The Sunny rose through the ocean depths, surrounded by the multicolored fish that made these waters their home. Beside the ship, Shirahoshi swam with powerful strokes of her massive tail, occasionally calling friendly sea kings to swim alongside them, not as weapons or tools, but as companions sharing the vast ocean. When they finally breached the surface, sunlight washing over them without the filter of Fishman Island's bubble barrier, Shirahoshi rose high enough to feel the wind on her face and the unfiltered warmth on her skin. Luffy stretched up to stand on the Sunny's figurehead, his favorite spot on the ship, facing the horizon with unwavering confidence. Next island, here we come. The crew cheered in response, each member turning their attention to the tasks that would carry them forward, Nami consulting her maps and log pose, Zoro settling in for a nap that everyone knew was just his way of staying alert, Sanji disappearing to the kitchen to prepare a meal, Usopp and Chopper fishing off the starboard side, Brook tuning his violin for a departure song, Robin opening a book while maintaining awareness of their surroundings, Frankie adjusting the ship's systems for optimal performance. And Shirahoshi, newest member of the Straw Hat Pirates, swimming proudly alongside her new family, ready to face whatever adventures awaited them with the courage she discovered within herself. Luffy, she called up to him, thank you for everything. He looked down at her, his smile as bright as the sun above them. Don't thank me yet. The adventure's just starting. As the Thousand Sunny sailed onward, carrying its extraordinary crew toward new horizons, Shirahoshi knew with absolute certainty that she'd made the right choice. The frightened princess who had spent 16 years hiding in a tower was gone, replaced by a confident young woman embracing her power, her freedom, and her future. Poseidon had awakened, not as a weapon to be feared, but as a protector to be cherished. And with Luffy and the Straw Hats at her side, there was no challenge she couldn't face, no sea she couldn't brave, no future she couldn't claim as her own. The open ocean stretched endlessly before them, full of dangers and wonders in equal measure. Shirahoshi welcomed them all. She was a Straw Hat now. She was free. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.